Chapter 371, A Story That Can't Be Shared 3. As soon as she opened her eyes, Han Soo-young spat out a mouthful of blood. Only after the black-colored blood filled up the ground in a rather large quantity did she finally regain her wits. The first thing she saw was the dense forest. It wasn't the location where she'd been fighting against Yu Jung-hyuk just now. I really almost died back there. Yu Jung-hyuk, you son of a bitch. If she hadn't transferred her memories to a dummy avatar on standby at the very last moment, she'd have died for real. You have exhausted today's allotment for the authorization of memory transfer. From now on, the applicable avatar will act as your true body. She'd been expecting something like this to happen. Fable, predictive plagiarism, is hesitantly carrying on with its storytelling. Han Soo-young got to clearly witness several scenes through this fable called predictive plagiarism, the one she earned after experiencing that mysterious dream, such as the various futures that would change according to the choices she'd make, Kim Dok-ya's death, or maybe even Yu Jung-hyuk's death, and then the sole future where both of those terrible choices could be avoided altogether. Due to the penalty of memory transfer, your physical abilities will be weakened significantly. I swear if either one of them is dead, then Han Soo-young complained unhappily to herself and tried to sense the waves of magical energy from the surroundings. She still needed to locate the direction where those two were. Not too long afterwards, her senses picked up on two rather enormous statuses. She quickly ran in that direction. Out of all the futures she read, this was the only one that worked out fine. Kim Dok-ya didn't die, and for the first time ever, those two idiots would get to share a proper conversation. That's what Han Soo-young's predictive plagiarism had predicted, and that was why she didn't try to dodge Yu Jung-hyuk's sword at the last second. So, Kim Dok-ya should definitely be alive. It was around here that she heard the sound of a sword clashing against something else. Are they still fighting? These idiots, I even died so that you two could talk to each other, but this. She figured that she really needed to give these two men a harsh earful when she arrived there. But when she pushed past the bushes and stepped forward, the ensuing spectacle freaked her out in a rather grand manner. Quiang bang. Yu Jung-hyuk was mercilessly slamming his sword down on Kim Dok-ya, currently sprawled out on the ground. Hey, you crazy son of a bitch. I guess it didn't work. Yu Jung-hyuk observed Kim Dok-ya lying on the ground. On the chest of the unconscious man, the shallow wound left behind by his dark heavenly demon sword was clearly visible. But I thought I saw it just now. Yu Jung-hyuk grasped his sword tightly and focused his mind. And almost right away, he sensed the dark aura oozing out from Kim Dok-ya's body. That was the wall, the identity of the strange foreignness he felt whenever he was looking at Kim Dok-ya. I can see it. He could see a jet-black wall composed of countless texts. He raised his sword high up and powerfully smashed down on that wall again. Now that a transcender began pounding on it with serious intent, the wall started shaking around in an unstable manner. The fourth wall is glaring at you. Not caring whether it was glaring or not, Yu Jung-hyuk continued to pound on that wall. Beyond this wall there might be. If it didn't want to open up, then until it did. If it couldn't be broken, then until he broke it down. Again and again. But then, hey, you crazy bastard, have you lost your mind? Accompanied by a shrill voice, he felt a rather powerful impact in the back of his head. Blood trickled down and blocked his vision. Through all that red, he saw Han Soo-young kneeling down next to Kim Dok-ya. Hey Kim Dok-ya, get a hold of yourself, wake you. What the heck, he isn't dead. Yu Jung-hyuk scowled unhappily as he staggered on his feet. Han Soo-young, do you really wish to die today? You already killed me once today, you bastard. I knew you wouldn't die from the beginning. Stop lying, my acting was beyond perfect, you know. She growled angrily and pointed at her incarnation body, which was her real body only until a few minutes ago, still lying on some forgotten corner over yonder. The incarnation body, currently crumbling away, showed the definite signs of bleeding out. An avatar wouldn't have bled anything in the first place. Yu Jung-hyuk spoke nonchalantly. An avatar would bleed like the real body if it was imbued with a certain amount of memories. Oh my, and how did you even find that out? From the record you wrote yourself. Specifically, you from the 1863rd turn, that is. Me of that turn wrote all sorts of crap, didn't I? God damn it. There were plenty of things she wanted to ask, but she chose not to. Instead, she poked Kim Dok-ya's cheek and spoke up. Still, this guy looks like he got completely fooled, doesn't he? Looks that way. How did it go? He went crazy and attacked me. Han Soo-young smirked and lightly pinched Kim Dok-ya's cheek as if she was proud of him. By the way, what's the matter with his chest? He's paying for making me eat dirt. Dirt? There is something like that. She shifted her gaze back to Kim Dok-ya and his cheek that sagged without any energy. In all honesty, he was only just barely alive, and not one part of his body could be described as okay. Indeed, the surrounding forest had been completely leveled by the battle just now, so it'd be far stranger if his body was left largely unscathed. Han Soo-young understood that this scene of utter destruction was the direct evidence of the conversation that took place between Kim Dok-ya and Yu Jung-hyuk. So, did you hear the answer you wanted? Yu Jung-hyuk paused for a moment before making his reply. A little. She could clearly read the depths of emotions contained in that simple reply of a little. But they belonged to Kim Dok-ya and Yu Jung-hyuk and no one else. That left her feeling just a bit rueful, a bit lonesome. Anyways, you're coming back to Kim Dok-ya's company now, right? Yu Jung-hyuk mulled over for a while, but then turned around to leave as if he had said everything there was to say. She frowned deeply. Hey you, at least try to answer properly, will you? I even helped you out, did I? The great war of saints and demons is just around the corner. Yu Jung-hyuk continued to walk further away, 1 step, 2 steps. Just as Han Soo-young was getting ready to shout out something else. Su-jut-jut-jut. Sparks buzzed around Kim Dok-ya's body and a voice suddenly came out from him. Yu Jung-hyuk SSI, that stupid scenario isn't the most important thing, you know. Startled by this development, Yu Jung-hyuk quickly unsheathed his blade. The imaginary wall enveloping Kim Dok-ya was actually moving. Past that wall, someone was speaking to him. Do you believe that it's the end when you leave after talking one-sidedly like this? No, to be more specific, it wasn't the wall, but rather. You should experience it as well, what the feelings of being a reader are all about, to understand what it really is. Su-jut-jut-jut. The wall that didn't want to break no matter how many times he hit it suddenly developed a small hole on the side, and a hand popped out from this mysterious hole. That hand proceeded to lightly grasp Yu Jung-hyuk's head and then slammed it right against the wall. I was lying in pitch-black darkness by the time I regained my consciousness. What happened? Did I die? By Yu Jung-hyuk. As the thoughts continued to swirl in my head, I slowly stood back up. I looked around but couldn't see anything. It was then a bright light from a lantern lit up in front of my eyes. Doc Yo-SSI, so this was where you've been all this time. Is that you, Yu Sang-SSI? Are you all right? Where am I? You're inside the library. Only then did I figure out what had happened. Most likely, I got sucked inside the 4th wall as I blacked out again. By the way, is it always this dark inside? No, it's just that the library is in a state of chaos at the moment, you see. The aftershocks of the battle this time killed off all the lanterns inside, and all the bookshelves have fallen down. Everyone is doing their best trying to restore everything right now. My apologies, I have created a lot of trouble for you. Yu Sang-a grinned softly and shook her head. No, not at all. Is there anything I can do to help? Oh no, it's fine. You should lay here and rest. I'll sit here and take a short break as well. Yu Sang-a let out a grunt and lightly settled down next to me. Her face, as illuminated by the dim light of the lantern, was the exact same one from my memories. Really did well. In regards to... When you said those things, I didn't need a lot of time to figure out what she meant by those words. No doubt, she would have borne witness to the spectacle of the outside from behind the fourth wall. A proper relationship starts from the act of introducing oneself first, doesn't it? It's possible that you two might become real friends this time. That would be great if such a thing was possible, but I wasn't expecting much, though. Honestly, I thought that it'd be a huge relief with Yu Jung-hyuk's anger being soothed somehow. No matter what I said, it'd be quite impossible to soften the sense of betrayal he must have felt. Books discarded on the floor seemed to be rolling around everywhere. Without thinking too much about it, I picked one up. Kim Dakya, Records from 15 Years Old, Volume 25. I sneakily closed the book and chucked the damn thing deep into the darkness. Excuse me, Dakya-sasai. Yes. Actually, well, I read that book, just a little bit. How much did you read? Almost the whole book, if I'm honest. I find these more interesting than the ways of survival, you see. I'm sorry. My face reddened from heat, but there was naught that could be done when she had already read it. It's fine, I do feel a bit ashamed, but still. I did think that, with Yu Sang-ah being a part of the library, such memories would possibly end up being exposed anyway. She carefully picked up the books rolling around on the floor, one by one, and dusted them before gathering them all together. They were all my memories. Her expression, as dyed by the darkness, was hard to see, but I could nevertheless sense how troubled she was feeling right now. Perhaps to console her, I picked up one of the books she had been gathering. Been a while, this thing. All these gathered books were my stories. Kim Dakya, 15 years old, 18 years old, 23-28. I slowly flipped through the pages. Kim Dakya, who didn't have a father. Kim Dakya, who didn't have any friends. Kim Dakya, who lost his mother. It was a life that always lacked something, or something kept disappearing from it. A lone existence is a being that doesn't exist. Kim Dakya was always alone, and that was why he was the only child. Dakja/Chinese letter, and the Kim Dakya did exist. What sorrowfully reasonable words those were. However, there was a sole moment where that Kim Dakya did exist. That was when the Dakja, only child/Chinese letter, became the Dakja, reader/Chinese letter. A life story being told like a lengthy report on a single book. That was basically my life in a nutshell. I spent my teenage years along with the ways of survival, and hid behind the wall this story created for me to dodge the pointed fingers of other people. At last, he'd come to life only when reading The Way of Survival. I sensed Yu Sang-ah's gaze, staring at me from my side. I wasn't sure why, but it also felt like it wasn't her alone. Maybe other librarians were also watching me from somewhere within the darkness. It was right then. An unexpected text caught my eyes within the open page. I met a strange person today during the interview. That person's name is Yu Sang-ah. The moment I read that, I unknowingly closed the book shut. Could it be that Yu Sang-ah also read this part? Haven't you ever wondered about this before, Dakya-sasai? Excuse me, about what? What if scenarios didn't start? What would have happened to us? I hadn't thought about that. What if the ways of survival didn't become reality back then? What if the novel Ways of Survival came to its natural conclusion and time continued to tick by? What would have happened to me? Would I still be alive? Could I have been able to carry on? Would we be still working for the same company as before? Well, my contract hadn't been extended, so I guess I might have been searching for a job in other companies. Right, I wouldn't have died that easily. I would have thought about dying every now and then, and also there could have been many a day when I fell asleep while rereading The Ways of Survival, but yeah, I wouldn't have died. Not that easily. I'd have continued to live on somehow. In that world, I wouldn't have become a friend with you, Yu Sang-ah. My workplace would have changed, and we wouldn't have a reason to get in contact with each other after all. Still, wouldn't we have tried to call each other sometimes? Well, I think we would have. I'm sure that, even after you left the company, I'd keep on remembering you. You are a strange person after all. Are you trying to get back at me? Yu Sang-ah formed a refreshing grin and carried on. I'd probably have gotten curious about your welfare. Is he doing okay? He's not sick, is he? Did he find a new job? What about marriage? I don't think I'd have gotten married. I couldn't even take care of myself properly back then. Well, it's true that one doesn't have to get married. I also found it easier to live alone, you see. Even you, Sang-ah Sasai. Yes, see, I told you. We'd have been good friends, I think. You really think so? Yes, of course. We'd study Spanish together, enter a writers' club, and ride bicycles together, too. Or to get ready for our old age, we start recommending savings plan or retirement funds. After we grow old and can't move anymore, we'd help each other to get to hospitals. I guess we could have lived pretty close by in that case. Of course, maybe we might have lived right next to each other. We continued to chat away. We talked about things that could no longer be, things that could never become a reality. Just like how the ways of survival was to me once upon a time. Yu Sang-ah continued on. Along with Huey-1 SSI, Hyunseong SSI, and Jai-Hai too, it'd be wonderful if other kids also lived nearby. Even Suyong SSI too. Even if such a world did really exist, it was not possible that all of them could be together, because they were characters from a novel. They were. Yes, it'd be really wonderful if that was true. Jung-hyuk SSI as well. Although his personality is terrible, he's a great cook, so I think it'll be nice to become his friend. Without a warning, something welled up from deep inside my heart. Huey-1 SSI and Hyunseong SSI would be. Fufufu in any case. And so we'd all be growing older little by little, in a world without scenarios, no constellations, and no docubus, where we'd meet up to share our stories and while sharing nice foods. I recalled the countless world lines that I witnessed together with this secretive plotter. Among all those possible worlds, maybe, just maybe, one of them could. It had been nice if such a world existed somewhere, don't you agree? There might be one just like that somewhere. Dakya SSI. Yes. I really enjoyed being with you, Dakya SSI. I think it's time for me to go now. Yu Sang-ah SSI. Actually, I had realized it a little while ago, why she suddenly began talking to me about such things. Master of the Island is calling out to Incarnation, Yu Sang-ah. By seizing the opening created by the weakening of the fourth wall, the master of these islands was calling out to Yu Sang-ah, the king of the reincarnators. Finally, the moment we've been waiting for had come. Indeed, one of the reasons why we decided to come to the Isle of Reincarnators was here. This library, it's a warm and cozy and nice place to be, but I can't remain here forever, you know. But hang on for a second, Sang-ah SSI. You don't have to be in such a hurry too. Yu Sang-ah shook her head. Just like me, she too had read The Ways of Survival by now. What I wanted to say, she already knew them all. There is almost nothing that I can do in here. As long as I'm here, I'll always remain as a simple reader. I looked up at her with a resolute expression, my lips firmly shut. I wanted to stop her. I wanted to ask if it'd be fine for us to talk for a bit longer. Unfortunately, I couldn't. Doc, Ya SSI, you told me this once before that you have only one turn and that the world we need to live in is this one. That's why. I'll say it like this. White light enveloped Yu Sang-ah as she placed her hand on my head, a smile forming on her lips. Let's meet again in the next life. Chapter 372, A Story That Can't Be Shared 4. As I slowly regained my consciousness, I decided to activate Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint. So, the method to clear the middle island No. 4 is. After managing to master the Fable control, Jiang Hui-1 had finally entered the middle island scenario and began massacring other participants. I dunno, well if they come at me I'll just kill them all. Our general is also a Fable grade, you know, don't you look down on us. Jiang Hui-1 activated Hour of Judgment, while Yi Jai-Hai activated Demon Slaying, as they ran amok in their battlefield. Around the same time, the kids began clearing the Middle Island scenario in their own clever way. I've tamed the invisible wisp. Let's steal that person's modifier using this guy. But we can just send insects over there, though. What a crafty method of clearing the scenario, so much so that I didn't need to help them out at all. Kyuhyuk groaned. Yeonseong found himself alone on a different middle island and was being severely beaten up by other constellations and incarnations. He was in a fetal position while glaring at his enemies with sorrowful eyes, but then he suddenly roared out like a huge bear. The one thing sadder than ending up all alone is to get beaten up all by yourself. Powerful rays of light exploded out from Yeonseong's body, causing the participants around him to explode en masse. I was familiar with that technique. That was one of the special techniques possessed by the Master of Steel, Impact Release, that released all the accumulated damage at once. As expected, the folks from the original storyline were truly cheat characters. In any case, I got to clearly see that Yi Hyun-seong had become stronger as well. Jang Ha-young has activated Breaking the Skyforce Punch. As for Jang Ha-young, she was clearing the scenario while displaying overwhelming strength. To me, she seemed to be on the path to truly becoming the master of the wall she possessed. Well, she was a talented person from the get-go, and was also capable of absorbing the techniques of others rather quickly, as well. Unidentifiable wall is evolving. Her wall had become far more stabilized compared to before. She could chat to other transcenders through her wall, and got to learn and understand their abilities. In a way, one could say there were some similarities between her method and me reading the book. Unidentifiable wall has sensed your presence. My view was instantly filled with white noise. Unidentifiable wall is staring at the fourth wall. The fourth wall is staring at unidentifiable wall. The moment these two walls stared at each other, my view suddenly grew fuzzy, blurry. The end of the world line is approaching. As my view crumbled away, I could hear an unknown voice. Kim Dakya, they shall come to find you. VRRR. The moment I regained my consciousness, I felt my smartphone vibrate. I switched the screen on without thinking too much about it, only to spot today's date. February 15th. As we weren't on Earth, the local weather report didn't appear. All I could confirm was the date. Even then, I couldn't say it was an accurate one, either. The space-time indicator had long lost its meaning after I moved around different dimensions willy-nilly, after all. Everyone within Starstream lived in a different time from the others. That was the case, but now. 15th of February is it. I fell into a bit of thought regarding this date, before giving up and placed the phone down. My head was in a disorganized mess, and almost every part of my incarnation body was aching painfully, too. I blinked several times while looking down at my upper torso to find bandages tightly wrapped around my chest area. Where am I now? The surroundings slowly filled my view. Firstly, the clean, white bedsheets, followed by the elegant oriental decor of the room I was in. A certain someone leaning against the window and looking outside threw a question at me. You awake now? You? Her eyes arched in a mischievous manner. Ah, so this is how it feels like coming back to life after dying. But didn't you die? I did. Seeing Han Soo-young snicker like that, the inside of my head grew even more complicated. I immediately recalled the sight just before blacking out. The events of her dying at Yu Jung-hyuk's sword, me fighting against him and then passing out from his attack, and finally sharing a conversation with Yu Sang-ah inside the library. Han Soo-young approached the bed before I noticed it and pinched my cheek. In any case, Kim Dak-ya, you can be really adorable sometimes. Only then did I realize that she played me for a sucker. I took a closer look and found a small IV needle stuck in her arm, too. Where are we? The waiting room of the main island, the place where that guy and his castle is. It was then I abruptly remembered something else. Master of the island is calling out to Incarnation, Yu Sang-ah. Back then when that guy was taking Yu Sang away, there was another message popping up in front of my eyes as well. Master of the island is inviting you. The king of reincarnators, the third protagonist of the book, 3 Ways to Survive in a Ruined World, had summoned us to their territory. But I'm pretty sure that I failed to clear the scenario. Don't I need to clear the Middle Island scenario in order to get here, so how? Nope, you did clear it. I quickly confirmed the message logs. You have cleared hidden scenario, snatching modifiers. Reward handout is currently on standby. It's true. But how? I hadn't collected the syllable vil, so how? Han Soo-young wordlessly pointed, the necklace hanging around my neck. Devil of lust and wrath. The completed necklace of modifier was emitting a soft glow. Something like this couldn't happen, though. One of the syllables should have been missing on my necklace. Han Soo-young spoke. Yu Jung-hyuk gave it to you before leaving, saying that it's a leftover. Yu Jung-hyuk did. But why? My thoughts were getting messy again. The things he said at the final moments rang vividly in my head. Yu Jung-hyuk, a former regressor. Not the regressor Yu Jung-hyuk, but a former regressor. What was he thinking about when he told me that? Where is he now? The next scenario. The sense of emptiness and relief brushed past me simultaneously when I heard her. He again went ahead before everyone in order to clear the scenario. Who was his target anyway? You just woke up, but you're already so full of questions. How annoying. I sat on the bed, eyes blinking like an idiot. She pointed to my chest again. Upon taking a closer look, there were 2 modifier necklaces hanging around my neck. One of them was Asmodeus's modifier, Devil of Lust and Wrath, while the other one was of the places where my modifier should have been were replaced by empty holes instead. No way. Yes way. Well, at least he did leave behind of that son of a bitch. It's my turn to ask questions now. Is Yu Sang still inside you? King of Reincarnators already took her. Did she say anything else before going? I unsteadily rose up from the bed and walked over to the window. While standing next to Han Soo-young, I stared at the unfolding cityscape. Reincarnators were busy roaming the streets that possessed the unmistakable ancient Chinese vibe. Beings from other worlds were here. Beings that had chosen to live a new life in this place, along with different names and different faces. She said, let's meet again in the next life. To me, it'd still be this life, but to Yu Sang, it'd indeed be the next life. She'd earn a new body, a new life, through the power of the King of Reincarnators. She'd get to live a new life in this world, in other words. Han Soo-young and I stared at the streets below without saying anything. It was as if we were searching for Yu Sang hiding somewhere within these nameless streets. Han Soo-young abruptly opened her lips to speak. It's snowing. She was right. Bits of snowflakes were descending from the sky. Originally, this particular world didn't have any snow, yet it was doing precisely that. Snow fell like starlight, and beyond the tall skis where snowflakes continued to fall, constellations were watching my tail. No indirect messages reached me, but I could still feel that they were looking at me. Probability they had gathered bit by bit until now was scattering gently in the skis. I turned my head to the side to find Han Soo-young studying me. She grasped my modifier necklace and grinned. I guess you're no longer the Demon King of Salvation. Shouldn't you get yourself a brand new modifier now? I began recalling the days I spent as Demon King of Salvation while listening to her talk. It hadn't been that long, but those days were the most brilliant moments in my life. As my vision grew wetter and blurrier, I could see Han Soo-young giggling away. Should I make one up for you then? What will sound nice on you, I wonder? How about I pass out too often, man? Or miraculous pee-hole? Hey, you are crying. My face was reflected in her irises, her eyes widening in surprise. Actually, I wanted to ask her, an author. As she was a writer, maybe she'd be able to tell me straight. Tell me that I did good until now. Whether I made the wrong choices or not. whether I would get to see the desired conclusion when I reach the end of this story or not. Hey, why are you crying like that? I get it, okay? I get it, so stop. There. She must have thought up something, as she began rummaging through her pockets next. Soon afterwards, something sweet and slightly sour entered my mouth. Why are you crying on a nice day like today? I mean, it's even snowing, too. I promised to think up a nice modifier later on, okay, said Han Soo-young, before avoiding my gaze to stare into the far-off distance. Today was the 15th of February. That's what the smartphone said. However, the time of this place and that of Earth weren't the same, therefore this indicator was simply an error. It was a coincidental date with no meaning behind it. Even then, what if there was some kind of a miracle, and this date was indeed true? Then today would be my birthday. Han Soo-young rubbed her eyes as she spoke. I want to see the others already. I summoned up every ounce of my strength to make my reply. Yeah, me too. As if those words became the signal. Revised text has completed its update. A gift sent by someone arrived at my doorstep. 3 Ways to Survive in a Ruined World, Final Revision, TXT. Inside the scattering, falling snow, Yoo Jung-hyuk was staring at the castle of reincarnators. Most likely, Kim Dak-ya had regained his consciousness by now, and Yu Sang-ah would be in the middle of reincarnation, having met the master of the island already. That woman! A deep frown crept up on Yoo Jung-hyuk's face. He'd never be able to forget the moment when his head rammed into that mysterious wall a few days ago. He got to forcibly observe that wall's insides amidst the horrifying storm of probability sparks, and that was where he bore witness to fragments of a tale he didn't know before. Some of them were as per his expectations, while some of them were definitely news to him. Some of them even took him completely by surprise, too. It all happened for an instant, but he found the information he'd been searching for from that wall, as well as the answers he wanted to find. And now, he realized that it was time to put to practice the answers he found. Secretive plotter. He raised his head to greet the gaze of a certain scheming constellation. Constellation, secretive plotter is looking at you. The secretive plotter, the constellation that made its first appearance in this regression, and an unidentified existence whose information or evidence couldn't be found in any of the 1863 worlds. Constellation, secretive plotter is looking at you. Haven't I played along with your schemes long enough now? I'm sure that I have the right to ask you a single question or two. The secretive plotter didn't reply for a brief moment. But then, a portion of the skis suddenly became dyed in darkness, and a ray of black light fell towards Yoo Jung-hyuk. Su-cha-cha-cha-cha. As the sparks from probability crackled all around him, the space-time within the near vicinity began distorting noticeably. He was currently in the world ruled by the master of the island. No top-ranked constellation would be able to exert that much probability in this place. Yet, the secretive plotter was an existence who could do exactly that. A pitch-black shadow rose up within the darkness. What are you curious about? Oh, the puppet of the most ancient dream. Why did you show me that book? The shadow of the secretive plotter wavered about as if to mock him. Yoo Jung-hyuk continued with his questioning. Did you want me to fall into despair? You wanted me to kill Kim Dak-ya after reading that book? Maybe, maybe not. Why did you plot something like that? You think you can understand it after hearing the answer. Its arrogant voice was filled with the confidence of knowing that a lowly being like him would never understand, even after hearing the truth. Yoo Jung-hyuk asked another question. Why did you send Kim Dak-ya to the 1863rd turn? Why did you order him to kill me there? Let's just say that such a scenario would have been fun to observe. The shadow wavered around as if it was cackling. Yoo Jung-hyuk remained calm and spoke his piece. All of your schemes were to destroy Kim Dak-ya. Why do you think that? Do you have any reasons to believe that's the case? Maybe I do. Maybe I do have a pretty good reason. This constellation, holding a mysterious animosity towards Kim Dak-ya, and at the same time didn't exist in the original work, just like him. Yu Jung-hyuk had been chasing after this constellation for a long time, and he had finally reached the answer to his pursuit in this very moment. Secretive plotter, are you the Kim Dok-ya from the future? Chapter 373, Episode 71, 50 Years Later 1. 4 days passed by since we arrived on the Isle of Reincarnators. I confirmed through Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint that other companions had completed their Middle Island scenarios and were ready to tackle the next one. Currently, I was staring at the screen of my phone. 3 Ways to Survive in a Ruined World Final Revision, TXT. It was possible that the epilogue I so wished to read was waiting for me at the end of this text file. Was that all? If luck was on my side, I might even discover some information on the current third regression turn, too. The guideline that told me how to act and how to clear upcoming scenarios in order to reach the perfect ending might be there. However, and if the end of the story is tragedy. If by any chance the final revision bit implied that it'll no longer change. Are you really capable of changing it? What if the action of me reading this thing only sets the ending in stone instead? Kim Dok-ya. I raised my head to spot Han Soo-young, bandages wrapped around her left hand, staring back at me. She was the only other existence remaining in this world who read the ways of survival besides me. If she was in my shoes, how would she react? If she was me, would she have opened this file? What are you looking at? No, it's nothing. I switched the phone screen off. There might come a day when I get curious about the contents of this story. However, now wasn't it? The epilogue I wish to know probably wasn't in this file. After finishing maintenance on her equipment, Han Soo-young lightly jumped off from the bed and spoke to me. Let's get going. The longer we dilly-dally, the further ahead that bastard Yu Jung-hyuk will get. We have someone to meet first before leaving, though. Who? Looks like he's here already. We heard knocking sounds as the door creaked open behind us. The first thing we saw was the thick, brown-colored Buddhist rosary hung around the person's neck. Next up was the gray Buddhist monk robe, and the firm, tough muscles peeking out from underneath it. He was a warrior monk who had gone through the repeated rigorous training for a very long time. I've come to fetch you, benefactor. I nodded my head and replied back, guide me to your king, please. 3 Ways to Survive in a Ruined World. According to the analysis of the best expert alive on the novel Ways of Survival, me, the 3 ways in its title referred to the 3 main characters of the novel itself. The first was the regressor Yu Jung-hyuk. The second was the returnee Jang Ha-yeon. And finally, the third was. There was another main character. Han Soo-young asked back hurriedly through midday tryst, sounding a bit flustered after listening to my tale. I remembered then that she wouldn't have such information on her, since she only read up to 100 chapters or so. But then again, it'll be a huge ask to keep milking one main character for over 3,000 chapters, won't it? She still remained needlessly sharp, though. Besides all that, 3 protagonists, as expected of this novel, treading on the surefire shortcut to the failed noveldom like that. I couldn't think up of a retort, because that failed novel had messed up our reality in a big way, hadn't it? So the master of this castle is the 3rd MC, am I right? Yeah. How important is he in Ways of Survival, as much as Yu Jung-hyuk? No, not really. Regardless of what, the main will always be Yu Jung-hyuk. For sure, the majority of the story spanning over 3,000 chapters unfolded with Yu Jung-hyuk as its focal point. The other 2 were called main characters only according to the narrative description provided during the story itself. However, the other 2 are just as monstrous as Yu Jung-hyuk, all right. Especially in the current point of time, the 3rd protagonist is a far stronger existence than Yu Jung-hyuk is. Even more powerful than that dude. I nodded my head while scanning the empty meditation chamber around us. This was where the reincarnators would perform penance and cleanse themselves. A chamber designed to soothe one's mind, fatigued and frayed by experiencing many cycles of samsara. I could hear the recitation of Buddhist scriptures coming from here and there, but couldn't see the king anywhere. Where is the king of reincarnators? The king is already with us. But all I see are the baldy monks, though. Han Suyong's words were countered with an emotionless reply from the warrior monk. He is everywhere, yet at the same time nowhere. I'm sure you didn't bring us here to crack jokes. He does not speak to those who lack the qualifications to see him. How amusing. Is that your way of bringing up the next topic of conversation? Replied Han Suyong as the corner of her lips curled upwards. I silently observed the expression of this mysterious warrior monk for a while before opening my lips to speak. If your king is everywhere, then that means anyone can become the king, doesn't it? Ji Yang. The unbreakable faith, held in my hand, cried out sharply, and at the same time the illusory sword light shot out towards the Adam's apple of the warrior monk. Su-cha-cha-cha-cha. As if an invisible wall was blocking it, the blade's tip, pouring out powerful magical energy, came to a dead stop right in front of the warrior monk's nose. He grinned and spoke. You've settled on a rather provocative solution. You're correct. Anyone can become a Buddha once they become enlightened. His mantra reverberated throughout the space itself. True voice mantra. I withdrew my sword and observed the warrior monk once more. An ethereal, subtle aura was oozing out from his entire body. His irises were now dyed in pure white, and within them the shadow of a mandala spun anti-clockwise. Most likely, this warrior monk was one of the countless incarnations the king of reincarnators operated. However, you won't be able to continue on with the scenarios in that fashion forever. Oh, the apostle of Black Square who carries the weight of salvation. Please, don't speak as if you're aware of all my methods. I no longer thought of Ways of Survival as a mere novel, and I definitely didn't see my companions as simple characters of it as well. That didn't mean that I would never utilize the information already in my possession, though. It's a pleasure to make your acquaintance, the Guardian of Mandala. Even though the fourth wall was active, I was still subjected to a considerable oppressive force. The friendly status in front of my eyes wavered around gently, the true appearance of the formidable being slowly materialized behind the warrior monk to our observing eyes. There he was, the ruler of the most ancient stratum of darkness in existence. Even if it were Metatron of Eden, or the highest-ranked demon kings of the demon world, none of them could contend against this being within this island. The fourth wall is quivering its non-existent eyebrows. Wall that decides samsara is showing an interest in you. Su-cha-cha-cha-cha. Jang Hayong's unidentifiable wall, Metatron's wall dividing good and evil. And finally, the third wall, the Guardian of Mandala, was the owner of the wall that decides samsara. I see that it's the fragment of the final wall. I'm guessing that Nirvana is trapped inside it. You're correct. He was a child who could have become a good bodhisattva. Unfortunately, he met you and had to leave my path of Buddhism. Well, I believe that the person in question feels satisfied. It was around there that Han Suyong butted into our conversation. Hold up, by any chance are you the Buddha, The Buddha? There are many different types of Buddhas in this world, and I'm merely one of them. Han Suyong now carried a dumbfounded expression on her face. But then again, her reaction was wholly understandable, considering that a constellation claiming to be the Buddha had made his entrance. This Buddhanim carried a gentle smile as he spoke to me. I've watched your stories for a very long time, dear Bodhisattvas. But I don't remember receiving your sponsorships before. There are those constellations who would reveal their gazes and flaunt their authority, and there are also those whose existence is a mystery. The true Buddhist offerings aren't in the forms of sponsorships, but through simple but meditative contemplations. You sure can dress up the fact that you've been watching the show for free. All right then, what is that you want from me? What I want? Do you believe that this self wishes something from you, dear Bodhisattva? I shifted my gaze over to the giant bell located in the middle of the meditation chamber. A small soul wrapped in a blinding light was inside the bell, made out of transparent material. I already knew whose soul that was. You've decided to reincarnate Yu Sangos Si, even though I didn't request it of you. You have invited us here and allowed us to recover. Again, even though I didn't request for your aid. Those are simply a part of one's path to attain Buddhahood. There is this lesson I've learnt while dealing with constellations until now, and that would be, there is no constellation in this world who doesn't expect anything in return when helping you out. Dear Bodhisattva, you have arrived at a rather hasty conclusion. Only the one placing faith in the exceptions of everything can discern the end of the scenario. I wordlessly glared at the warrior monk before pointing at the bell in the center of the meditation chamber. I addressed the monk. Don't confine the incarnation Yu Sangha to this island, please. She is far more valuable than you can imagine. All beings reincarnating on this island will become a part of the island. I shook my head. Like what you said just now, there are exceptions to everything, aren't there? She'll be able to pick up after where Nirvana left off. Make incarnation Yu Sangha your new Arahat. The Arahat, or the Seekers of Truth, were not shackled to the Isle of Reincarnators, and were free to roam the worlds of scenarios and continue to experience the cycles of reincarnation. I'm willing to make the deal with you when you do that. Making a deal, is it? Do you believe that you know what this self wishes for? Isn't it to stop the great war of saints and demons? A futile attempt, that is. This self does not hold any interest in the contradictory fables such as good and evil. Even when those contradictory fables are about to make an unholy mess out of your island. As if he found this topic rather amusing, the eyes of the warrior monk arced rather elegantly. The guardian of Mandala was neither on the side of good nor evil. If I were to describe it in words, then he was an existence far closer to nothingness. So, there was just no way that such a being would welcome the authorities of good and evil growing larger within his territory. I'll try to stop the great war of saints and demons. Do you believe such a thing is achievable with your power? My fables replied in place of me. Great fable, demon world spring is bellowing out. Giant fable, torch that swallowed the myth, is growling menacingly. The air and the surroundings began trembling unstably as the two great fables revved their engines. If my guess was correct, then the guardian of Mandala wouldn't be able to reject my offer, because he couldn't take part in the upcoming great war of saints and demons. That's why. As a being who was neither good nor evil, he had no pretext to enter the war, you see. Is the incarnation named Yu Sangha becoming this self? Arahat, your only wish, dear Bodhisattva. One other thing. You are a greedy Bodhisattva, it seems. Allow my nebula to start the great war from the area we prefer. As the master of the island, I believe that you can interfere with the proceedings at least that much. At that moment, I sensed the quickening of the faint magical energy from throughout the entire temple. It was a riot of status, as if to make its existence known to me. It was a status possessing a certain aura that wasn't at all threatening or murderous, but nevertheless, something that I couldn't even hope to come close to yet. The fourth wall is strongly activating. Wall that decides samsara is smacking its lips. A short while later, the guardian of Mandala nodded his head. I agree to your conditions, dear Bodhisattva. Unfortunately, it's not possible for the whole of your nebula to start from your preferred area on the main island. In that case, I ask of you to send incarnations Yi Gil Yong and Shin Yu Seung at the least. HMM, where do you wish to send them? The next city. The next city, is it? Oh my dear Bodhisattva, could it be? If it was the guardian of Mandala, he should have cottoned onto what I was planning here by now. The main island of the Isle of Reincarnators was where the fables from the third generation had been stuck frozen in time. As these fables boasted a far wider spectrum of variety compared to first and second generations, your starting point played a factor in you acquiring unexpected fables. Even if others couldn't, I had to ensure that those 2 kids would start from the next city. In return, the rest of your companions will start in locations that this self has selected. Understood. Han Soo-young standing next to me, silently observing the unfolding situation until then, sent me a probing glance after hearing my reply. Hey you, what will you do if this baldy monk sends us to a weird place? The warrior monk saw us get into a bit of argument, and a strange smile suddenly crept up on his lips. Dear Bodhisattva, this self truly enjoys watching your story, but unfortunately, the fables you have accumulated so far is simply too inadequate to contend with other nebulas participating in the great war of saints and demons. Maybe she felt a bit triggered by the word inadequate. Han Soo-young began to retort in a snarky manner. Looks like you haven't heard the news that we smashed apart Olympus not too long ago. The fables dear bodhisattvas have accumulated are indeed peerless, but they haven't experienced the trials and tribulations of time itself. In the next moment, both Han Soo-young's body and mind were suddenly wrapped up in bright light. Constellation, Guardian of Mandala, has agreed with your transfer to the next scenario. Transfer to the next scenario has begun. So suddenly, I was taken by surprise a little, but quickly regained my bearings. Finally, I was heading towards the location of the third great fable that complete the climax. Most likely, my other companions were in the middle of transferring, just like me. I shifted my head to find Han Soo-young looking up at me. Kim Dakya. I reflexively extended my hand towards her and replied, Do your best. I'll try to find you as soon as possible. Yeah, right. The moment Han Soo-young's fist bumped into mine, she was completely enveloped in bright light. As I watched her figure disappear, I became aware once more that she had become my comrade for real. Like back when Yu Jung-hyuk said it, Han Soo-young had become an indispensable existence for me to reach my desired conclusion. On my way to this place, I ended up owing her a lot, so it was time that I pay my debt. However, Kim Dakyev then had no idea. It was also in that very moment that the screen of my phone began glowing brightly, as well. Words from a page I didn't recognize began rising up line after line in front of my eyes, as if to foreshadow an ominous future. He didn't know that, by the time Kim Dakya got to meet her again. No, hang on a minute here. 50 years had passed by already. What the hell? Chapter 374, Episode 71, 50 years later, too. 50 years, what the hell was that all about? As my vision grew blurrier, I caught the smile floating up on the warrior monk's lips. Oh dear Bodhisattva, please try to endure time itself. Transfer to the main island has begun. Wall that decides samsara is investigating information of your fables. Investigation has concluded. The scenario location for you and your comrades has been decided. This was the very last message I heard before losing my consciousness. Sub-scenario genre selection has begun. Ricardo stared into the pitch-black liquid, filling up his transparent cup, and recalled the memories of the distant past. Even if you train for 50 years, it'll be difficult for you to become a royal court mage. That was back when he first started learning magic. You don't seem to possess the suitable constitution to become a scholar. That was when the #1 scholar in the Kaiksenix archipelago came to tutor him. Your hands are not suited to holding a sword. And that was back when he grabbed a sword for the first time in the Royal Swordsmanship training grounds. Some lives are like that. What's important is to never fall into despair and continue to strive forward, son. Ricardo's father, Virchin von Kaiksenix, said those words. That couldn't console him, though. A man who had no talent nor desire to do anything wouldn't be consoled after hearing those words anyway. Even with no talent, he should strive forward regardless. What would he become if he continued to live on like that anyway? Ricardo drunk himself into a stupor every single day. He hung around with the archipelago's worst hooligans and did drugs. He even became addicted to gambling and squandered away the fortunes of his family, too. He even fell in love, once upon a time. She was older and the most beautiful woman in the entire archipelago. Unfortunately, even that had to end after she married his oldest brother. Ricardo stared at that black liquid and muttered to himself, "I'll just kill myself." That resolution was the first time he swallowed the brave pill in his life. He lightly grasped the cup, and as if drinking wine, he emptied its contents in one go. Its effect manifested itself not too long afterwards. His complexion became dark and lifeless, and his arms faltered to the side with no energy. And exactly 4 hours later, someone else opened his eyes in Ricardo's body. Besides Ways of Survival, I had read quite a few other stories. When I was young, I read those great works of literature my mother recommended, and after I grew up a bit, I began selecting books on my own volition to read. As an aside, the very first web novel I read began with its protagonist harping on about his misfortune, while dying before waking back up again. Just like now. Blurg. Your Highness Prince Ricardo, are you all right, my lord? Someone was patting me on the back, and I vomited out the contents of my stomach for a long time. I wiped my mouth and raised my head only to discover a mirror. The handsome face reflected in it was pale and charmingly attractive. It was definitely my face, but something felt unfamiliar about it. Who was I? Ricardo. You probably know this already, but I'm not a prophet. No, I am as far removed from such a being as you can get. I'm not the demon king of salvation. I'm also not the king of a kingless world. I am 28. No, wait. I was 28 and I was an employee of a game company. My hobby was reading web novels. Your fables are resisting against the great fable that sets this world's view. Exclusive skill, the fourth wall, is strongly activating. I slowly closed my eyes before opening them again, and was immediately overcome with the sensation of the world separating itself from me. The fourth wall has impeded your character immersion. Due to the effect of the fourth wall, your ego has been fully retained. Probability of the island is suspicious of your preferential treatment. I was greeted by the feelings of an unfamiliar body. This one didn't belong to me. I am Kim Dokya. My consciousness returned to me in full, and the chain of memories was organized in an instant. I was participating in the Great War of Saints and Demons scenario and had just entered the main island. It was awash with the various spectrum of third-generation fables. Different fables created different genres of worldviews, and the one right in front of my eyes was body possession. Suchachajajat. A term not aligned with the worldview has been spoken. Penalty will be imposed. By the time I woke up again, 2 hours would have passed by. Your Highness, are you feeling all right? Someone was calling out to me from beyond my hazy view. Please, may I have some water? You have used language not in line with the worldview. Penalty will. Hand me some water. Here it is. After drinking large gulps of cold water, I felt my reasoning return bit by bit. My head was in a mess as the memories of someone else rushed in. I was now occupying the body of a man who had already lived for over 30 years. In certain areas on the main island, words that don't align with the applicable worldview will be prohibited from being spoken. I could just about remember some stuff from the Ways of Survival. Although this particular turn barely got a passing mention, the novel definitely did feature a scenario such as this one. The so-called possession scenario. I'd be advancing the scenario, Great War of Saints and Demons, from this person's perspective from here onwards. It is impossible to summon a Dakibai when in the applicable area. You are unable to receive indirect messages from the constellations when in the applicable area. Not only that, strange restrictions were in place, too. This was a different development from the Great War of Saints and Demons that I knew of. Looks like I'll have to collect information first. You have performed actions befitting the personality of the host body. Your understanding of the applicable host body is increasing. Straight away, I began rummaging through the memories from the ways of survival. The Caixinix Archipelago, the Isle of Heroes that led the age of saints and demons. I couldn't really recall any particularly useful information. Why did it have to be an area that didn't get much of a mention in the ways of survival? But it didn't feel like a completely foreign place to me, though. Was that because of the memories of the person I had possessed overflowing into me? Exclusive skill character list has been activated. Now originally, I couldn't see my attribute window. However, if it was the one belonging to the host body that I took over then. Character information. Name Ricardo von Caixinix, Kim Dakya. Age 31. Constellation support. None currently, one constellation has shown interest. Exclusive attribute, a gifted hoodlum. Exclusive skills, royalties outer appearance LV3, soliloquy LV6, roleplay LV5. Stigma none. Overall stats, physique LV10, strength LV10, agility LV10, magic power LV10. Overall rating. The person you have taken over is the fourth prince of the Caixinix Archipelago. Unfortunately, he lacks talent in all types of combat abilities, including swordsmanship, magic, etc. Currently afflicted by abnormal status condition, possessed. Why was I stuck inside such a guy's body? The scenario's message definitely told me that I'd occupy a host related to me. However, what did this wastrel prince have in common with me? Not only that, this dude's natural muscular stat was 10. The only thing similar between us would be our age, but even then. Your Highness, are you immersing yourself in roleplay once more? Roleplay. Last time you were imitating our first ancestor. You're now wearing an outfit that I haven't seen before, Your Highness. You're dressed like the people from Earth's Chronicles, sir. I took a look at the mirror without thinking too much about it and spotted the familiar outfit. Bizarrely enough, all my equipment had been transferred along with my possession of the host body. I replied in a deadpan manner, "It's an outfit of a certain demon king." "A demon king, Your Highness." I reached into the coat's inner pocket, and fortunately enough, I could feel the equipment I possessed still in there. I took out my smartphone first. In order to acquire more info on this place, I needed to check the contents of the ways of survival. Tsujajajut. The applicable item does not line up with the world view and therefore cannot be used. Screw this damn penalty. The butler alongside me must have interpreted my actions in his own way since he spoke as thus. "Indeed, Your Highness, it'll be better to enjoy yourself for one last time. Soon, His Majesty will call for you. Well then." Leaving behind those words, the butler went away from my side, and I was left all alone in this small room. Kim Dakya's lone lie. Right, it's a relief that at least you're here with me. I wonder what had happened to my other companions. According to the last message I heard, it was highly probable that they all ended up in the same area as me. For the time being, I switched the scenario window on. The backlogged messages rose up non-stop in my view. You have entered main islands, Caixinix Archipelago. Caixinix Archipelago is currently cut off from the Great War of Saints and Demons, conflict region spacetime. You can advance to the Great War of Saints and Demons after solving the applicable area's sub-scenario. I'd probably have to raise an army here and participate in the Great War of Saints and Demons, meaning this place would serve as a foundation to enter that war. You can't view the information on the scenario yet. The plot of the applicable scenario will change according to the route you have chosen. The route I've chosen. No, hang on a minute. At least I need to know what the conditions for failure is so I can. You won't fail the applicable scenario as long as you do not die. Now, this kind of situation would be my first. In any case, I wouldn't fail this scenario as long as I stay alive, was that it? I sat down on the bed and calmly organized my thoughts. My name in the current worldview was Ricardo von Caixinix. As this scenario was built upon the basis of possession, I had to perfectly carry on acting like the prince I took over. My current priority should be to search for the other members of Kim Dokya's company. It was highly possible that they were possessing other people like me, so only after I find them would I be. Your Highness, are you in? It's Knight Bilston. Just as I began thinking, someone knocked on the door. The Knight Bilston framer. If Ricardo's memories were correct, then that guy was supposed to be my escort knight. His Majesty is calling for you, Your Highness. The moment he pushed open the door to enter the room, I was immediately taken over by this unexplainable feeling. The person standing before me was a knight boasting white mustache in his early 40s. Without a doubt, I should have been unfamiliar with his appearance. But then, your fables are reacting towards the applicable individual. Exclusive attribute, scenario interpreter, is displaying its effect. The knight's face was changing bit by bit. Mr. Kai. A voice that I really missed entered my head, even though it hadn't been that long since last I heard it. Back when I was still in the military, there was an incident where I lost a spent cartridge. The fable accumulated within the man was talking to me right now. Words that lost the majority of their strength were desperately pleading with me regarding something. I told myself to never lose one ever again. I knew the owner of that particular fable well. Mr. Hyunseong. When I spoke up, Hyunseong stared back at me. Applicable individual does not understand your words. It is you, isn't it, Mr. Hyunseong? Applicable individual does not understand your words. Applicable worldview has recommended that you perfectly act according to the role you were given. Hyunseong, staring at me with vacant eyes, soon formed an awkward grin and replied back. Hyunseong, haha, are you still in the middle of your roleplay, Your Highness? May I be permitted to inquire as to who you were imitating just now? It seemed that Hyunseong couldn't recognize me at all, along with an expression of someone who didn't remember me on his face. I called out his name, Lord Bilston. Yes, Your Highness. Do you not recognize this outfit? Is that the outfit of the demon hunters, or maybe a member of revolutionaries? Although my current face was different, my current attire was the white coat that I've been wearing all along. If this man was really Yi Hyunseong, there was just no way that he'd not recognize it. But the fact that he still failed to do so could only mean exclusive skill character list has activated. Character information. Name Bilston Framer. Age 43. Constellation support none. Exclusive attribute loyalty and honorable knight. Exclusive skills rapid reaction force LV8, Kingdom's royal swordsmanship LV8. Stigma none. Overall stats physique LV80, strength LV80, agility LV80, magic power LV80. Overall rating. Once upon a time, there used to be two souls living within this body. He was a knight of the kingdom and at the same time a shield of someone else. The shield waited for his master to appear. He waited and then waited some more. Finally, the master of the shield has appeared after a long wait, but the shield can no longer perform its role anymore. While reading the explanation in the attribute window over and over again, I recalled the invincible fist Yu Hoseong's warning. When you get to the main island, be careful of the great fable. If it's a great fable, I think I can control it now. I didn't mean it that way. You will end up fighting against a great fable itself when you get there. Only then did I understand the meaning behind those words. I raised my head to sense the movement of a gigantic probability encasing the entirety of the archipelago. Something was staring at me. Something that was neither a constellation nor a demon king. Great fable, Kaiksenix archipelago is avariciously staring at you. I clenched my fists and bit down on my lip. The still oblivious Yi Hyunseong continued to mutter to himself in the meantime. If it's not the revolutionaries, then maybe another kingdom. The Yi Hyunseong that I knew had been swallowed up by this world and disappeared already. Chapter 375, 50 Years Later, 3. While on our way to the audience chamber, I continued to engage Bilston in conversation. Sir Bilston, By any chance, have you lost anything recently? Maybe often as well. For instance, an empty cartridge. Pardon. A term not fitting the worldview has been used, and therefore. I mean, such as misplacing a portable magical explosive. Your Highness, do I look like such a pathetic fool capable of doing that? I just couldn't think of what to say here. When looking at that stiff walking posture or the firm pectoral muscles, or even that slightly dopey expression on his face, this guy was definitely Yi Hyun-seong, but according to character list, he was not him, but the character of this world setting, Bilston Framer. I reread the overall rating portion at the bottom of the character list. Once upon a time, there used to be two souls living within this body. He was a knight of the kingdom, and at the same time, a shield of someone else. The knight of the kingdom bit must be referring to Bilston Framer, while the shield bit must be referring to Yi Hyun-seong. The shield waited for his master to appear. He waited and then waited some more. Finally, the master of the shield has appeared after a long wait, but the shield can no longer perform its role anymore. The most important portion was this part. I kind of realized that Yi Hyun-seong had been waiting for other companions to arrive. The issue here was with the number. Just how much time was this long wait thing implying here? Your Highness, I couldn't help but feel complicated when looking at the man staring back at me with those dopey eyes. There were only two things I could be sure of at the current juncture. One, Yi Hyun-seong had been entered into this scenario far earlier than me. Two, he had been swallowed up by this world's great fable, and his ego had disappeared. Great fable, Keixenix's archipelago, is smacking its lips in your direction. The fourth wall is glaring at Keixenix's archipelago. In that case, could the others who didn't possess the fourth wall have ended up in the same state as Yi Hyun-seong? Your Highness, did something happen? I wordlessly stared into Bilston's large eyes. This guy was definitely Yi Hyun-seong, but could he really be called Yi Hyun-seong right now? I'm sorry, Sir Bilston. I beg your pardon, why so suddenly? I must have put you through a lot of hardship. I know that it was difficult for you to protect me until now. I wasn't addressing Bilston Framer right now. I always used the excuse of being too busy and didn't take good care of you, even though you have saved my life several times already. Yi Hyun-seong helped me out many times during our journey towards this scenario. I had enough chances to share a deep, meaningful, and personal conversation with him, but as it was the usual case, his spot in the queue continued to get pushed back under the pretext of me preparing for the next scenario. I believed that we understood each other without the need to say something. I believed that the fables we earned together could ably sub for us in that regard. And the end result of that was this. Bilston must have thought of something after he heard me, because he wiped his nostrils while shifting his gaze to the outside view. Your Highness, you really do possess a warm, gentle heart. Character Bilston Framer has been moved deeply by you. I wasn't trying to impress him, but someone else, though. Without saying anything else, we continued down the long hallway. Portraits of the previous kings lined up the walls of the hallway in sequence. The one that caught my eyes the most among them was a depiction of a lone man holding up a broken sword in the middle of a storm. The first ancestor, the Storm King Ulysses Keixenix I. I stopped walking for a moment and studied that painting. It has been my honor to serve you throughout my life, Your Highness. I turned my head around, and Bilston began telling his tale as thick teardrops formed around his eyes. He locked his gaze at the distant parapets of the castle and continued on. Can you still remember it? I almost lost you when you were around 7 years old, Your Highness. So, just by recalling the sight of you precariously dangling on the castle's parapet still causes my heart to tumble to the pits of my stomach, Your Highness. Was that all? When you were 13 years old, you went to the lavatory and then... Hey, hang on a minute, this dude. He's way too similar to Yi Hyun-seong, wasn't he? But then, you're still worried about this lowly one even until the last moment. Last moment? Bilston stared back at me with sorrowful eyes, before quickly avoiding meeting my gaze. "We've arrived, let us go inside." The doors to the audience chamber were before us already. They opened up to reveal the royal guards lining up on either side of the red carpet, and the captain of the guards, decked out in the silver crest, stood proudly in the middle. "Sir Bilston, why are you so late?" I was sharing a final goodbye with His Highness the Prince. There were several spots in their conversation that I wanted to butt in, but thanks to the overall atmosphere, I couldn't squeak a word out. Bilston, who had been in a tearful mood only a minute ago, was now carrying a grave, serious expression. The gazes of two people growling at each other collided in midair. The captain continued on. "A final goodbye, is it? A traitor found guilty of high treason dares to enjoy unnecessary luxury. You better watch what you say." The two of them got into a battle stance simultaneously. Bilston pulled out a bastard sword while the captain, Why was this person carrying that sword? Indeed, the weapon held in the captain's hands was something that I was intimately familiar with. I personally collected the materials and had it crafted for the sake of a certain someone, after all. "Sword of Judgment. Sir Bilston, do you wish to become another dewdrop of the execution ground alongside your prince?" The captain's red eyes wavered threateningly from beyond his helm. "Oh, my king, if you will it, then so be it." "Docu SSI, you're trying to do it by yourself again. I told you not to do that, did I?" I knew who this person was. "Stop, both of you." Bilston heard my urgent cry and stopped gathering momentum and stepped back. Meanwhile, the captain of the guard, glaring at me with hostile eyes, removed his helm. And his face matched exactly that of Jiang Huiwan. Exclusive skill, character list is activating. Character information. Name Erich Stryker. Age 37. Constellation support, none. Exclusive attributes, loyal servant, swordmaster. Exclusive skills, demon slaying LV10, kingdom's royal swordsmanship LV10. Stigma, none. Overall stats, physique LV 75, strength LV 80, agility LV 90, magic power LV 70. Overall rating, once upon a time there used to be two souls living within this body. He was the guard captain of the kingdom, and at the same time a sword of someone else. The sword waited for that someone to appear with the shield. He waited and then waited some more. Finally, the sword met the one he'd been waiting for after all this time, but he can no longer remember him. Bloody hell, even Jiang Huiwan was in that state too. The captain, staring at me with quiet, still eyes, eventually spoke up. "It seems that the prince is aware of the situation he is in. Guards place the criminal under arrest." Under arrest. I was caught by the guards without a chance to resist. But then again, I couldn't fight back even if I wanted to, what with this body's average stats being only 10. I could see the guillotine beyond the lines of the guards. Only then did I realize why I was brought to this place in the first place. It was quite likely that this scenario would begin with my execution. Among all the novels I read in the past, there was this genre referred to as the so-called hooligan tales. The story usually went along the lines of the hooligan protagonist being born as the last-born child of a royal family or nobility, and he'd become a better person by going through all sorts of trials and tribulations. Now normally, most of those stories began in a similar way. The Keixenich's royal family was ruined, such as the family being ruined even before the start, and the ruler of the archipelago died after being stabbed by the dagger of his most trusted advisor. And he'd fall into moments of mortal danger after his parents and best friends were killed off. The second prince, renowned for his mastery of the sword, and the third prince, renowned for his magical prowess, lost their lives at the hands of the usurpers. What the hell? What was I supposed to do when such important memories came back to me only just now? I shall guide the criminal personally. All thanks to that, I ended up delivering myself to my own execution ground like an idiot. Many different thoughts floated up in my head. I was wondering why this wastrel killed himself, but Maybe he didn't want to be executed. Bilston, now being forcibly held back by the guards, could only call out to me in desperation, "Your Highness, Prince Ricardo." The captain grabbed a hold of my hair and dragged me towards the gallows. If Jiang Huiwan's consciousness was still here, this would have turned into a rather amusing spectacle, but alas. I spotted a lunette designed to perfectly accommodate my neck. In a short while, I'd be forced up on the gallows and have my head cut off. And when that happened, I'd fail this scenario. Unique skill, the fourth wall, is strongly activating. I looked up at the face of the guard captain and asked him, "Are you really going to do this?" The captain smirked back, "Oh, so you feel scared now that you've come this far?" "That's not it." "Then what?" "Didn't you promise to become my sword?" A faint sense of fluster floated up on the captain's face. "What rubbish are you spewing now? Have you forgotten your pledge already? Was that all a lie, your promise of seeing the end of the scenario alongside me?" Character Erich Stryker is feeling a small amount of confusion towards you. Looks like you've begun rambling nonsense now that you're about to die. Just like it was with Hyun-Seong, Jiang Huiwan's ego didn't want to return that quickly. The coldness of the wooden lunette surrounded my neck. It was at this point in time that someone loudly shouted out, "Her Majesty is making her entrance." I heard the sounds of curtains being pulled back. Someone was walking towards the audience chamber enveloped in still silence. The footsteps sounded dignified, light, but at the same time weighty. Accompanying those footsteps, Ricardo's memories flowed into my head like a song. The enemy of my father and my brothers. The dark magician of the Keixenix archipelago. The regicide. And my heart began powerfully pounding away. The woman that I used to love. "Convict, raise your head." I slowly raised my head and saw a short-statured king, decked out in a black medieval-style cloak embroidered in silver, with neat and tidy tights underneath. "Do you have any final words?" I dazedly stared at this king and murmured something inside my mouth. Exclusive skill, character list is activating. Due to an unknown reason, only a portion of the applicable individual's information can be viewed. Character information. Name. Age 50. Overall rating, the applicable individual's overall rating is still being prepared. The info on the king didn't show up properly. However, her face looked to be in her early 20s no matter how hard I looked. I stared at the face of this king, the one that couldn't be the age as declared by the character information, for a long time. Both Hyun-Seong and Jiang Huiwan were characters from the pages of the Ways of Survival. However, what would it be like for someone who wasn't a character to begin with? Just like me, who wasn't the character of the novel. I was holding on to a certain expectation, a hope. I asked you if you have any last words. If it was her, wouldn't she be able to remember me? He didn't know that. By the time Kim Dokya got to meet her again, 50 years would have passed by already. Those were the words from the final revision of the novel that I saw just before I was thrust into the scenario. So this was what they meant, huh? I have. Then I permit the convict to speak. I forced a smile and spoke up. "I'm sorry that I came so late, Su-Yong-ah." Su-cha-cha-cha-cha. Powerful sparks wrapped around me from my declaration that didn't align with the worldview's probability. I had to say those words out loud, though. It was unknown how Han Soo-young took my words, but she simply continued to look down on me without any movement whatsoever. But then, she slowly lowered her head and matched my eye level. Her emotionless eyes, the beauty spot just below one of them, and her lips that always mocked me for fun, now arching up in a smooth line. Proceed with the execution. The guillotine's blade chopped down, but I didn't try to dodge it. I had my reasons, of course. Scenarios of the main island are all based off on the third generation of fables. If my thoughts were correct, then Ricardo Keixenix would not be killed off in this manner. Kaboom! One of the castle's walls exploded, and at the same time, the guillotine falling down was destroyed. I could see the broken blade of the guillotine through the gray dust cloud rising up. It's the revolutionaries. Protect Her Majesty now. Amidst the chaos, I could hear the loud shouts of the royal guards. Soon, the audience chamber became the scene of pure pandemonium filled with pained moans and screams. Damn it, it's the first prince. Stop him, you must stop him at all cost. It was the first prince of the Caixinix archipelago, Ricardo's blood brother, as well as a genius in swordsmanship and magic as well as academia. I've come to save my little brother. I was greeted by this overflowing sense of happiness. When the arrestingly beautiful sword light danced and sparkled within the audience chamber, the royal guards rushing in all collapsed one after another like puppets with strings cut. There was someone who'd never change even if the worldview or scenarios around him did. Indeed, there would ever be only one such person even if you searched through this entire world line. But I closed my lips just as they opened up halfway. I wasn't sure why, though. Great Fable, Caixinix Archipelago, is enjoying the bloody, gory battle. My comrades so far had forgotten about me. I was sure it'd be the same story for that dude, too. In a way, it might be the best thing for him, I thought. Fable, comrade of life and death, has begun its storytelling. It was then the first prince suddenly glared at me. And then a message popped up in my head. You fool, you must be Kim Dakya. Chapter 376, 50 years later, 4. Capture them, apprehend the eldest prince first. They are taking the fourth prince away. Angry reincarnators inside the screen were pouring out a barrage of arrows and sword lights, and there were two men running within the thick, choking smoke, Yu Junghyuk and Kim Dakya. Balat Bayat. With a very restless expression on its face, Bu jumped up and down in the air like a ball of mochi. Arrows flew past Kim Dakya's head with barely any room to spare. Some of them even accurately fell towards his back, but the first prince quickly swung his sword to deflect them all. Retreat. With that order, the revolutionaries receded away, and there were constellations watching this spectacle from afar. Constellation, father of the rich knight, is gazing at Caixinix Archipelago. Constellation, queen of the darkest spring, is looking at the underworld successor. Constellation, abyssal black flame dragon, is roaring out in frustration. Unfortunately, their messages couldn't reach the incarnations within the channel. Constellation, demon-like judge of fire, is pleading for at least one message to get through. Constellation, demon-like judge of fire, is requesting for the permission to send indirect messages. Balat Bayat. With a sad look, Bu shook its head. Dakibus might possess the authority to change broadcast setup of their channels, but the situation this time with the Isle of Reincarnators was a rather unique one. Constellation, demon-like judge of fire, is glaring at the guardian of the mandala. The one who offered up the stage for the scenario of the great war of saints and demons was the master of the Isle of Reincarnators, guardian of the mandala. He was not allowed to participate in this scenario personally, but at the same time was given the same level of authority to interfere as the high-ranking Dakibus during this war. Oh, young angel, that is regrettably impossible to do so, unless you decide to convert to the path of Buddhism through this opportunity. Constellation, demon-like judge of fire, is throwing a temper tantrum. You should be mindful of your temper. Those with much anger in them will get consumed by it later. A great number of constellations are expressing their indignation. Not caring whether they were furious or not, the guardian of the mandala continued to stare with quiet, distant eyes at Kim Dakya inside the screen, as if he was searching for a certain profound epiphany from that man's face. Channels nearby are momentarily being frozen. Tsuchachachun. It was around then that someone revealed himself in the air, accompanied by a sudden storm of sparks. The guardian of the mandala shifted his disinterested eyes in that direction. This one doesn't recall giving entry permission to a dakibai from the bureau. I simply had to come with the situation being what it is. Oh, king of reincarnators. The one that appeared was the upper-grade Dakibai, Bihyung. He courteously performed the Buddhist-style greeting and began his questioning right away. I'm aware that you possess 10 different names. Sakya, Sakyamuni, Siddhartha, Tathagata, Sugata, Buddha. Which one among them are you exactly? The expression on the guardian's face shifted ever so slightly after hearing Bihyung's question. The fact was, he would transform into a different existence according to the name he currently possessed. This one is currently Sakyamuni. Sakyamuni, please cancel the abnormal scenario currently imposed on the Nebula Kim Dakya's company. That is contrary to our prior agreement. Have you not handed over all control of the preparatory scenarios to me? I believe you were strongly requested to remain neutral in the upcoming Great War of Saints and Demons. Bihyung's sharp gaze landed firmly on Sakyamuni. The warrior monk's eyes quietly held that gaze, and the mandala within them reversed their spinning direction. Well, this one isn't the first person to stop being neutral, it seems. Can you clarify that, please? I heard recently that there is an upper-grade Dakibai greatly favoring incarnations from a certain nebula. Right after Sakyamuni finished replying in a subtle but accusatory tone of voice, Bu popped up in midair and plopped its soft tummy on top of Bihyung's head. Are you here because of the Bureau, or by your own volition? Bihyung lightly bit his lip, but didn't provide an answer. Instead, he looked at Kim Dakya on the screen, currently breaking past the clouds of explosions and running away. The trial you have put them in is far too excessive. It might be only a blink to the constellations, but that length of time is as much as one's lifespan from a human's perspective. This one was also a human once upon a time, and this scenario is a necessity, especially if they are to reach the Black. Sakyamuni. O Dakibai, the celebration of the end will soon commence. The mandala within Sakyamuni's eyes continued to spin, and the faint figures of Kim Dakya and Yu Junghyuk could be seen above the spinning mandalas. Which Black will you vote for? With the aid of Yu Junghyuk, I was able to safely escape from the audience chamber. The pursuit attempt by the guards proved to be annoyingly persistent, but thanks to the sacrifices of a few revolutionaries, we made it to the safe house in the end. Yu Junghyuk chucked the unconscious Bilston, the host body of Yi Hyun-seong, on the floor and opened his lips to speak. Why did you show up this late? It wasn't because I wanted to, okay? The world view is growing suspicious of your conversation. Midday tryst has been activated. Yu Junghyuk shot me his trademark murderous glare for a little while, and then continued on with his story. I arrived in this place around 2 years ago. I calmly listened to his experiences. He suddenly became the first prince of the Kaiksanix archipelago, and just as suddenly, throne usurpation broke out. Yu Junghyuk was thrown into the middle of that armed revolt and began his bid for survival. He escaped from the royal castle and created the group of freedom fighters, and then he searched around for the rest of the companions. By the time I arrived here, Yi Hyun-seong, Jiang Hui-1, and even Han Soo-young were already in that state. Are the 3 of them the only ones here? Where are the others? Haven't found anyone besides them. It's likely that only they were summoned to this world. Yu Junghyuk possessed the sage eyes. In some regard, that skill allowed him to spy on far more complete information than my own character list. He had been relying on this skill to search for the other companions. He probably discovered me through it, too, since the sage eyes didn't work on me. I observed the still unconscious Yi Hyun-seong. Yu Junghyuk said he got here 2 years ago. In that case, just how long was Yi Hyun-seong trapped in this worldview for? They have all been swallowed up by the great fable, haven't they? Probably. What about you? You all right? You think a measly couple of years is enough to break me down? I belatedly recalled what an amazing dude Yu Junghyuk was. The trustworthy Yi Hyun-seong, the driven Jiang Hui-1, and even Han Soo-young all broke down and lost themselves. Great fable, Kaiksanix archipelago, is shooting a dissatisfied glare at Incarnation, Yu Junghyuk. However, Yu Jung-hyuk was completely unscathed. But then again, that was pretty obvious when I thought about it. The method employed by this worldview, great fable to break us down, was time itself. However, Yu Jung-hyuk possessed far stronger resistance towards the passage of time than anyone. Well, he had already spent hundreds of years in the dark stratum going through harsh training after all. The worldview is expressing its puzzlement over your lengthy silence. I raised my head towards the sky. The current scenario was governed by the rules set out by the worldview. Even you, Jung-hyuk, seemed to have realized how we should start acting from here onwards. I finished preparing myself and opened my lips. Older brother. Yu Jung-hyuk's expression crumpled into something unsightly. Hey, don't make a face like that. This is the restriction of our current scenario. Do you think I'm enjoying this either? Yu Jung-hyuk's eyes, bubbling over like boiling lava, finally softened just a tad. Yup, this guy was going to experience severe difficulties pretty soon. According to Ricardo's memories, the original setting for the first prince was loving and warm-hearted big brother. That was why. Yu Jung-hyuk opened his lips. Speak, Ricardo. What are you going to do next? It looks to me that even the revolution has failed now. No, besides all that, why did you even appear in the execution ground anyway? I was planning to kill the false king. Character Ricardo von Keixenix is being agitated. I was pretty sure of him being dead serious here. The Yu Jung-hyuk I know was fully capable of doing something like that after all. Too bad that wasn't my style. But should you be doing something like that? She's originally your bride, isn't she? Correction, she was supposed to be one. The throne was usurped on the first day of the wedding, however. Oh, I see. So it's that sort of development. I felt just a bit relieved now. Han Soo-young and Yu Jung-hyuk as a couple. Kim Dak-ya's company hadn't allowed any dating at the workplace yet, so hell no. It was at this point in time that an unexpected message entered my ears. The worldview finds your words interesting. The genre of the applicable scenario has tilted slightly towards romance. The genre had tilted. Yu Jung-hyuk continued on. It was already far late to save her. She was stained by the corrupted magic and lost her original humanity. Oh, really? The worldview finds incarnation, Yu Jung-hyuk's words, interesting. The genre of the applicable scenario has minutely tilted towards fantasy. I gave another signal to Yu Jung-hyuk with my eyes. Did you hear that? He nodded his head. In any case, we both are too late now. We can't save them all. No, it's not too late. Whatever the case may be, there are two of us, right? After saying that, I shifted my gaze down to Bilston on the ground, still snoring away, and carried on. Maybe three. Those three will be everyone. Who knows? There might be more. Maybe a miracle happens and an existence crossing over from another dimension will help us out. The worldview finds your words interesting. The genre of the applicable scenario has acquired the possibility of being fusion fantasy. And in the following moment, new scenario messages popped up right before my eyes. The selection point for the sub-scenario, genre selection, has been generated. A new scenario message has arrived. We quickly access the scenario window. Sub-scenario, genre selection. Type sub. Difficulty. Clear condition. The worldview you've been summoned into can participate in the great war of saints and demons. Choose the genre of the worldview you're now a part of and lead it to its natural conclusion. The worldview that witnesses the conclusion will earn the right to participate in the war. Time limit, none. Reward, participation of the great war of saints and demons, 300,000 coins. Failure, you will be bound to the Isle of Reincarnators. List of currently selectable genres. 1. Romance. 2. Fantasy. 3. Fusion fantasy. The attributes of a genre will strengthen the further you act in a manner befitting said genre. So this is how it was. I raised my head and found Yu Jung-hyuk's dumbfounded expression. I kind of understood how I should go about advancing the scenario now. However, the The problem here was the difficulty of figuring out which genre was the right one to select. We just don't have enough information. It'd been nice if only we knew what the original plot of this world was. It was unknown what kind of a conclusion we'd get after choosing a particular worldview. What I wanted was to ensure the survival of everyone and move on to the next scenario together. But what if someone were to die as the price for me choosing a genre? Yu Jung-hyuk threw out a question. I guess your high and mighty book didn't mention this part then. I flinched slightly before making my reply. How can I know something that a regressor like you doesn't know? But I do know. What, you know what exactly? The course of this scenario. I stared at him in pure shock. Yu Jung-hyuk knows of this scenario's plot, but that couldn't be. If my memories were correct, then the Yu Jung-hyuk of the third regression turn had not experienced a scenario like this one, and he'd not go through one in the future either. I read it in a book. What book was that? I momentarily wondered if he was talking about the ways of survival, but quickly realized that was impossible, because even that novel didn't contain any in-depth information on this scenario. I read the diary written by Han Soo-young from the 1863rd turn. She experienced this scenario in that regression. Han Soo-young of the 1863rd turn. And why do you have her diary in the first place? I got hold of it via special means. I glared at Yu Jung-hyuk for a little while. Well, I was slightly overcome with complicated feelings of betrayal. Han Soo-young from the 1863rd turn didn't mention any information on this scenario to me. Why was that? Did she think that I must not know about it? Or just to spite me? My thoughts remained complicated, but I shook my head and got rid of them. They weren't important right now. If you possess such information, you should have told me that already, you dumbass. Okay, so, how did the 1863rd turn Han Soo-young clear this scenario? Whatever the case might have been, the important thing was that we did have info on this scenario. If we had info, then that meant there was an already set method to clear it. However, Yu Jung-hyuk's expression was gloomy. This world is not unfolding in the original direction. What are you talking about? Throne usurpation didn't happen in the original plot of this world, meaning the event of the current king becoming king shouldn't have happened. Which means, before we entered this world, someone changed the plot of this story. I was flustered. Currently, we were in a situation where neither of us, Yu Jung-hyuk the regressor, and me, the sole reader, had any idea on the future storyline. Sure, there had been a few times when the progress of the story didn't match up with the ways of survival in the past, but this would be the first time we couldn't predict what the future held for us. The ways of survival, I knew, didn't contain any potential solutions to a scenario like this one. Ma Ibu Sho Old have read the final revision. Regret belatedly rushed in. It was at this time that someone knocked on the door. Enter. Almost at the same time Yu Jung-hyuk issued his order, the door was pushed open and the revolutionaries entered. They brought along an older man, currently tied up by them. He says he's the secret envoy from the king. He wishes to speak to you, sir. The older man turned out to be the same butler who handed me water back when I first regained my consciousness after the possession. His beard trembled in fear. He sucked in deep breaths and addressed us. First Prince and the Fourth Prince, Her Majesty told me to give you a certain item, specifically, Her Majesty from 40 years ago. 40 years ago. Yu Jung-hyuk and I exchanged glances. Meanwhile, the butler rummaged through his inner pocket and pulled something out. It was a certain book. 3 Ways to Survive a Totally Ruined Scenario, by the author Han Soo-young. Chapter 377, Episode 72, 3 Methods 1. I received the book and stood around in a daze, but somehow managed to ask the butler in the end, when was it that Her Majesty gave you this book again? It was 40 years ago when she gave me the first manuscript, and for the next 10 years she consistently gave me more manuscripts, All I did was to bind them into a single book, Your Highness. Have you read its contents? I swear on my life, I've not read a single line, Your Highness. Let me emphasize it again that I only merely organized them and bound them, sir. I quickly opened the book and was greeted by the clean, well-organized table of contents. Episode 13, Counterattacking Princes. Episode 14, One Prince and I. Episode 15, Three Methods. I frantically leafed through the pages. Although the collected book itself was rather thick, I didn't have too much trouble reading it, thanks to the special effect of my attribute. Someone here was still unhappy about my reading speed, however. You're reading it way too quickly. It's you who's slow, older brother. What does it say? I didn't reply right away. As I flipped through the pages, this vague listlessness washed over me. Each page was thick with the fatigue of the passing time and the sense of desperation and urgency. I couldn't be sure whether that was Han Soo-young's intention or not. But I was sure that she had foreseen the moment of me reading her book arriving in the future. I stopped reading the page I was on and went straight to the very last portion of the book. That was where the author's afterwords were. Seriously now, there are always those folks who go straight to the author's afterwords when first reading a book. The words greeted me as if they were waiting for my arrival. Even though I knew that couldn't be the case, I almost broke out into an unconscious chuckle, nonetheless. By the time you're reading this book, I steeled my heart and read the next line of the text. I'd still be living a pretty good life, I guess. Haha, were you scared? This idiot. In any case, if my prediction is correct, then the person reading these words is Kim Dok-ya, Prince Kim Dok-ya no less. What an unfortunate thing that is, not being able to spectate on that sight. Han Soo-young's trademark dry sarcasm could be sensed so vividly among each and every word she wrote. You want to know how I can tell? Well, actually, even I can't be sure. There's a limit to how much I can guess what would happen, you know. It's just that I looked at all the potential circumstances on how you might arrive here, as well as countless cliched conditions attached to it, and predicted the one with the highest odds, that's all. Of course, my prediction could be wrong, though. These words were written in a playful manner. However, the contents being conveyed were definitely not a joke. In all honesty, I wish I was wrong, though. Me waiting for someone for decades and decades. You think such a thing is even possible? You crazy fool. Han Soo-young's author's afterwards wasn't written in one sitting, it seemed. Most likely, she began collecting records the moment she possessed someone in this world, and then committed those records to these pages once she was finally able to write them down. Her records continued on. I'm sure you have figured it out, but well, I was born into that woman's body. At first, I really thought that I had reincarnated, you know. I almost went crazy out of boredom and frustration during the first year. If I hadn't activated Avatar in my head and organized my memories, then I might have really lost my mind back then. Things got better a little bit when I hit 4 years old and began writing stuff. What a screwed up thing that is, me being a wordsmith and needing to write things even in moments like this. Maybe I want to be saved by writing. I didn't know whether to laugh or shed a tear. All I could do right now was to silently turn the page. At first, I thought you'd show up in 3 years at the latest. I mean, you did show up 3 years later before. But then, after 3 years went by, then 4 and 5. Don't be mistaken that time flew by just because I'm writing like this, okay? My thoughts changed. And from a certain point on, I accepted it. It was getting harder and harder to flip the pages. I see, Kim Dok-ya isn't going to show up for a while. Han Soo-young's handwriting seemed to be trembling just a little. That damn asshole told me to wait for him, yet he's still not here. What could I possibly say to her? However, I guess this can't be Kim Dok-ya's fault. What the hell? It was as if whatever I wanted to say already was conveyed to Han Soo-young just as she began writing this. My bad, I'm sure you don't want to read about something like this either. But the thing is, it's not easy to complain in this place, you know. Her words continued on. I had no idea when I was still writing novels, but now that I've been living in this place, There's just way too many cumbersome details that I haven't thought of before. Like the shower facility being really terrible and there are bugs the size of my fist crawling around in my bedroom. And as for food, let's not even mention that, shall we? On the 6th year, did you know that my speech is becoming weird lately? I'm beginning to sound like some kind of a high-class lady from medieval times or something. And on the 7th year, dear Sir Kim Dakya, just when will you come? 8th year, blurg. Finally, 9th year. This is like a bad joke, a person's life fleeting past this quickly. From here onwards, the records were occasionally cut off. The sequence of time was not consistent, and I discovered parts that seemed to be added in later on every now and then. God damn it. Kim Dakya, you son of a bitch. Just what the hell do you want from me, you stinking Dakibai bastards? The years I've been living in this place is now almost the same as what I spent living on Earth. So like, when you see me again next time, you better call me Nuna, got that? Han Soo-young's handwriting was changing bit by bit, with the distinct feeling of it slowly becoming something no longer hers but someone else. Honestly, I'm writing this because I can pretty much guess what will happen to me in the future. And also, in a way, the future of this world view, too. Decades would prove to be a short length of time for constellations. However, it'd not be the same for a human being. Han Soo-young had to endure yet another lifetime in this place. I thought that this scenario probably isn't in the ways of survival, because we've changed too much of the original storyline, right? You have experienced that lengthy amount of time all by yourself, yet you can still call me that. If I take the hands-off approach here, the idiot you and Yu Jung-hyuk will probably go around doing dumb things and mess up the scenario instead. So, at that moment, it felt as if Han Soo-young was standing right in front of me. I mistakenly thought that she was here and speaking to me in her usual confident and shrewd tone of voice. Oh, my soul reader, this is the tale of a certain woman who managed to survive in the messed-up scenario. Goosebumps began slowly rising up from the ends of my neck. This was the recorded history of Han Soo-young's life, words containing her rage, her resentment, and her longing. I don't know whether you're a suitable guy for this 3 methods or not, but at the least, I'm sure of this one thing. The following words were eerily similar to a certain body of text that I was familiar with. You reading this story will definitely make it out of here alive. Han Soo-young's afterwards came to an end there. For the longest time, I couldn't tear my eyes away from the full stop at the end of the sentence. Ricardo. I looked to my side to find Yu Jung-hyuk staring at me. Did that woman possess the power to predict the future? Maybe. Now originally, the predictive plagiarism was the 1863rd turn Han Soo-young's power. The Han Soo-young of this turn, the one responsible for writing this book, also had acquired that power now. And the result of that was this very book. Here was the brand new signpost for me to follow, me who had read The Ways of Survival. The worldview is paying close attention to your conversation. Genre of the applicable scenario has tilted slightly towards fusion fantasy. I flipped to the first page of the book. Now was the time to study the required information in depth. For some reason, a line of text that I glossed over earlier caught my eyes. P.S. This novel is an original secondary creation related to ways of survival, and not created for the purpose of monetary gain. I ended up smirking just a little then. Episode 1. Birth of an SSS rank Reincarnator. I read and reread the words that Han Soo-young had written with so much care. As if I was drunkard walking straight into another world, I voraciously ate up her words, because that was the only courtesy I could pay to the author of this story as its reader. And it was fun, god damn it, in some passages much more so than the ways of survival. Just how long passed by like that, I finally raised my head. Han Soo-young had said this, that there were 3 ways of clearing this scenario. The 3 clearing methods will represent each different genre. The 3 would be fantasy, romance, and fusion fantasy. The course of dynastic revolution will fall mainly to the fantasy genre, if you select this route. All the available route had pros and cons. If you got something, then in turn, you'd have to lose something as well. However, there were certain things that would be lost regardless of which route was chosen. For instance, the first thing to be lost would be, Please spare me, Your Highness, spare me. Yeonseong's human rights. Roll to your left. Yuyok Kyuyok. To your right. Why, Your Highness? I don't remember permitting you to speak. Like a military drill instructor, Yu Jung-hyuk was in the middle of punishing Yeonseong. As for me, I was spectating that from the side. But why are you making me do this? Fourth Prince, Your Highness, please say something to your brother. Can you recall anything now by any chance? You my back. I'm an old soldier, so why? In order to tread the route Han Soo-young's predictive plagiarism had foreseen, we need to make Yeonseong regain his memories first. And certain memories were better remembered by one's body rather than one's brain. This might be a cruel thing for Yeonseong to go through, but unfortunately, we didn't have any other choice right now. Even Han Soo-young's book failed to record the life of Bilston as lived through Yeonseong's perspective, as we had no idea what kind of a life he lived before he got swallowed up by this world. There was only so many methods we could resort to for waking him up. And so, how long did it pass by like this? Something feels strange. Yeonseong, his head planted on the floor, suddenly began rambling nonsense. I feel more comfortable now. Character Bilston is under tremendous confusion. Ego of the character, Yeonseong, is wiggling around. Yu Jung-hyuk and I stared at each other simultaneously. Now normally, it had been a tall order to wake Yeonseong's ego with such little stimulation. However, the story was a bit different right now, because I was here and so was Yu Jung-hyuk. Beings sharing the same fable as you are in your near vicinity. The bond between the fable is strengthening. Right now, 3 members of Kim Dokya's company had gathered here in this place. There was a certain old adage regarding this situation, Salmon Siang Ho, Chinese letter, Chinese letter, Chinese letter, Chinese letter. Which means when 3 people gathered, they could create a fake story of a tiger. We might not be able to create a tall tale of a tiger, but it could be possible to do something else instead. Fables possessed by your nebula are beginning to resist against the worldview. For instance, summoning back the memories that didn't exist within this worldview. Ego of the character, Yeonseong, is slowly opening its eyes. Faint rays of light were now being emitted from Yeonseong's body. Great fable, Kaiksenix Archipelago, is glaring at your group. Han Soo-young said that this scenario played out in a world controlled by that great fable. So, if one could escape from the fable's control, then it'd be possible to regain one's forgotten ego. Yeonseong blinked his eyes laboriously, his lips bobbing up and down like a newborn trying to form words. Worldview is imposing a penalty on the words not aligned with the probability. Yeonseong writhed painfully as he got electrocuted by the sparks. I shifted my head to the side and saw the battle-ready Yu Jung-hyuk standing up from his spot. The important preparations had been completed now. Yu Jung-hyuk grasped his dark heavenly demon sword and threw me a question. Which route are we choosing? The one we'd been treading all along. The author of this scenario was Han Soo-young. Regrettably, there was no guarantee of the work ending up as a success, even if the author did an excellent job. Time to start our attack, Yu Jung-hyuk. Because the ones to complete the story were the characters, not the author, that's why. A new great fable is beginning to sprout in your nebula. Chapter 378, 3 Methods 2. Erich Stryker was the captain of Kaiksenix Archipelago's Royal Guards. She wasn't just the archipelago's best knight in title only. She was also the first sword of the nation's ruler, And the sole reason why she was able to climb up to that position was due to her constant training throughout the day and night. Swiyish. Erich sliced and cut the silent night of the training hall over and over again. Thick sweat drops fell nonstop. She looked down on the droplets and thought that they should have been someone else's blood drops instead. I let them slip away, in front of Her Majesty no less. The rebellion of the first prince, the assault on the audience chamber 3 days ago, had found itself in the mouths of the gossipers already. Some minstrels began singing songs about it, too. Most of them were singing songs that extolled the first prince. Oh, the great revolutionary Schweiken von Keixenix. Look at his wide shoulders and his back. The bright sword light scythed past the darkness of the practice grounds. The hateful face of the fourth prince, who had escaped alongside the first prince, floated up. It didn't want to disappear no matter how many times it was cut apart. The strange thing was, every time Erich recalled that face, she felt a rather subtle emotion float up too. Seeing the backs of the first Prince Schweiken and fourth Prince Ricardo, as well as Bilston Framer, getting further away, Erich was overcome with this inexplicable longing. Not wanting to acknowledge that emotion, she continued to swing her sword. As usual, she swung the blade over and over again, trying her best to shake off all the distracting thoughts. Unfortunately, it seemed that today's training would have to end here. Is it a sneak attack? There was a slender shadow, gently wavering within the darkness. Erich quickly unsheathed the real sword mounted from her waist. She thought of killing the intruder the moment it displayed any suspicious behavior. Quite unexpectedly, though, the opponent revealed his presence first. Please put away your weapon. I didn't come here to fight. Under the faint light of the moon, a man with the slender physique walked out from the darkness. It was Ricardo von Keixenix, the fourth prince of this archipelago. Erich loudly shouted out, "Are you out of your mind? With what balls have you come here? Even though the world has changed, you still enjoy swinging your sword." Erich raised her sword up high while emitting a dense murderous aura. The fourth prince, however, placed his sword down on the ground instead. The former's eyes narrowed to a slit. "What are you planning here? I know that in 10 minutes guards would show up to surround me, and also, subduing me wouldn't be all that hard for you with your skill set. So, I'm turning myself in, meaning I'll have you arrest me and take me to the execution ground." Erich knew that the fourth prince was not right of his mind recently. However, she didn't expect to see a situation like this one. It had been only a couple of days ago that he escaped with the first prince's help, yet he walked right back in of his own volition so he could be executed. Still being wary, Erich slowly walked over to the fourth prince. Without a doubt, he was in a completely unarmed state. Erich didn't miss this chance and quickly captured the fourth prince. A pair of pure eyes sparkling under the moonlight met her gaze now. "In return, I'd like you to listen to my tale for the next 10 minutes. And why should I do that? I'm going to die anyway. Not hearing the last words of a dying man will leave you with an unclean taste in your mouth." Erich stared at the fourth prince with complicated eyes. "If you're going to plead your innocence, I won't have any of it." She knew that the fourth prince was not guilty. However, the throne had changed hands, and Erich was the captain of the guards serving the new ruler. The fourth prince smiled and shook his head. "This story isn't about that." "If not, what then?" "Honestly speaking, I was in a serious dilemma on what to say here so we could get the you we know back. I couldn't even make a wild guess at all." The unexpected opening remarks managed to make Erich flustered, and she frowned deeply. Was this a new type of underhanded scheme? Everyone in the kingdom knew that the fourth prince used his silver tongue to seduce many women in this land. A long time ago, there was a certain woman. Regardless of what his listener was thinking, the fourth prince began his tale. She loved kendo and was talented enough to enter the competition as the representative of her own district. Along with a faint bout of pain, an unknown emotion began stabbing her head. And with her sword, she rescued her precious comrades many times. Something that disappeared a long time ago. She swung her sword against the unfairness of the scenarios over and over again, and with that very same sword, she also protected me. What are you even talking about? I'm solely the blade of Her Majesty. The fourth prince looked up at Erich with emotions of lamentation. You really can't seem to remember anything. It was then another voice came out from within the darkness. Prince Ricardo, I'd like to say something. Erich flinched in surprise and quickly raised her body up. Since from when did those two men appear in the darkness? She growled menacingly and spoke. So, it was a trap all along. No, it is not. The one to reveal himself from the darkness was Bilston Framer, the only knight she acknowledged in this kingdom. Sir Erich. Bilston took a step towards her. She got startled and quickly issued her warning. Take one more step, and I shall cut off the fourth prince's head. This is a trap. I must escape from here, Erich thought like that and scanned the exit to the training ground. However, something felt wrong. Fables related to you have begun going on a rampage. As if her entire body had become frozen, she couldn't move at all. Your fables are resisting against the control of the Keixenix archipelago. We promised never to forget, didn't we? Bilston stared at her with sorrowful eyes. No, but his name is. Fables related to you are ruminating on the old memories. Huey 1 SSI. Forgotten fables have begun their storytelling. At that moment, her world crumbled away. Fables flooding in covered up Erich's memories. That was the story of the forgotten 10 years. A story from when Erich was Erich yet, while Bilston was not Bilston either. It was exactly 10 years ago when both Yi Hyunseong and Jiang Huiwan arrived in this world. Hyunseong SSI, it is you right. Ut Huiwan SSI. Tsu Chachachun. They had become the possessors at a similar point in time and luckily enough, got to recognize each other pretty quickly. Looks like we'll have to resort to using voice projection in this place. The two of them began gathering information on this world little by little. First, they learned that this was the final preparatory stage before they could participate in the great war of saints and demons. 2. That there were time differences between the summoning of each member of Kim Dokya's company to this place, and that the scenario wouldn't begin unless all the actors had arrived. Besides all that, Hyunseong SSI, it looks like you took over a person pretty similar to you. Huey 1 SSI, you also suit your host really well. And finally, their sense of self would steadily erode away with the passage of time. Great Fable, Keixenix Archipelago is monitoring your actions. Probability of the world is pressuring you to perform your given role. Whenever they sensed the gaze of the Great Fable, they acted out their roles in order to not get on that thing's nerves. It seems that Suyong SSI has completely forgotten about everything. It doesn't matter what I say, she. Will we end up in the same situation as her? I believe that Dokyo SSI will show up before that. And so they waited and then waited for some more. Are Jai Hai and the kids doing well, I wonder? If it's them, they should be all right. They only had each other to rely on in this world. Fable Most Pure Comradeship has begun its storytelling. In a world where no one knew of their story, they simply had to continue talking to each other in order to protect themselves. Claying. Sir Erich, please defeat it right now. Let us get going, Sir Bilston. The hosts of the two being rivals came about quite naturally. They needed to create more opportunity to stay next to each other, as that would increase the opportunities to use voice projection, to talk to each other. Looks like your swordsmanship has improved by a lot. Your title of Emperor of Steelsword perfectly suits you, no. When we go back, I better ask Dokyo SSI to buy me a new sword. Every time their blades crossed, they shared voice projections. At this rate, we might end up becoming swordmasters before Dokyo SSI arrives here. 1 year passed by, and the second year went by just like that. And they were assigned to different posts that matched their personalities. Yi Hyunseong was thrust into 4th Prince Ricardo's faction, while Jiang Huiwan was put under the banner of the Dark Magician. Once their affiliation changed, the environment they experienced also changed. The two of them couldn't cross their swords as often as before, and they had to live the lives of Erich Stryker and Bilston Framer more and more, and not as Jiang Hui-Wan and Yi Hyun-seong. They had to eat food as Erich Stryker and speak as Bilston Framer. In the process of acquiring something that wasn't theirs, Yi Hyun-seong and Jiang Hui-Wan began gradually forgetting some things about themselves. The two of them were slowly and steadily becoming the characters of the Kaiksanix archipelago. There was a time when Jiang Hui-Wan, drunken out of her mind, came to speak to Yi Hyun-seong. "I'm a horrible person, Hyun-seong SSI. Why are you saying such a thing? Isn't that reason why I'm being punished right now?" She then began talking about things no one had brought up until now. "Do you remember the Jumho Station's mother and her child? They fought against Cheoldo faction with us." "Yes, I remember. We also met them in the Dark Castle, didn't we?" Yi Hyun-seong recalled the mother and daughter duo from the Jumho Station, the mother who fought to protect her child, and a little girl who was holding onto the hand of such a mother. The child's mother lost her life in the Dark Castle, and the girl was handed over to the care of the Wanderers. Both of them could have survived, if only I had realized the truth of the paradise sooner. "It's not your fault, Huey-1 SSI. That was not something we could have prevented. In all honesty, there were many smaller fables than ours, right? Those fables that couldn't even become proper fables." The drunken Jiang Hui-Wan laughed out. When she did, the vestiges of fables staining her hands glowed brightly. All of them were the stories that she had acquired along the way. Stories created by fighting against the great and noble constellations as a member of Kim Dokya's company. Jiang Hui-Wan was proud of that story and lived her life without shame. However, a slightly different thought had permeated her head lately. Maybe the fables we have collected so far were created after we also trampled on such small fables. Huey-1 SSI. And maybe it's our turn now to be trampled on. 4 years, then 5, passed by like that. Both Jiang Hui-Wan and Yi Hyun-seong didn't give up. By the way, what were the surnames of Yu-seung and Gil-yong? Wasn't it Yi Yu-seung and Shin Gil-yong? Something sounds wrong, but their memories disappeared bit by bit, and the 6th year passed them by. Where is Dokya SSI, and what's he doing right about now? I don't think he'll come this year as well. The 7th year passed by. Being 7 years in arrears with our wages, isn't it completely an evil corporation? Let's definitely create a labor union later. Yes, we must, let's not forget it. Their initial promise of meeting up at least once a week to talk was changed to once a month, and that eventually became once every 2 months instead. The days they did meet, but were unable to say anything, increased too. And on a certain day during their 8th year, Jiang Hui-Wan asked him in a dazed voice, "Weren't we supposed to wait for someone?" Yi Hyun-seong couldn't reply to that question. "You know, Hyun-seong SSI, if I ever forget about you then, I'll remember you. Then please kill me." That was the last time they met. A short while later, the dark magician started a revolt, and Yi Hyun-seong stood on the side of the former royal family to face off against Jiang Hui-Wan. Hui-Wan SSI. Their swords clashed intensely several times in the air. Wounds on Yi Hyun-seong's body accumulated inside the storm of blinding sword lights. The trajectories of her sword swings were definitely different compared to when they were sparring in the past. Each of her attacks contained her clear will to kill him. Hui-Wan SSI. Even when subjected to the repeated voice projection, Jiang Hui-Wan didn't reply. Her silence substituted for her answer. As if she had been holding back until now, Erich's merciless sword swing sliced Yi Hyun-seong down. The latter's vision seemed to grow distant then. Even though he was staggering about, he still walked closer to Jiang Hui-Wan. 1 step, 2 steps. Finally managing to get close, Yi Hyun-seong stared into her eyes and, for the first time ever, spoke the words he couldn't say for the longest time, and quite likely, he'd not get to say ever again. I love you, Hui1SSI. Fable Most Pure Comradeship has concluded its storytelling. I wordlessly read the unfolding fable. Some words were quietly sorrowful, while some parts were painful enough to tear my heart out. Ego of character, Jiang Hui1, is waking up little by little. Faint light floated around the bodies of both Bilston and Erich. I could sense that their souls were resonating with the fable. Yehyunseong collapsed, but a smile remained etched on his face. I quietly studied that face for a bit before breaking the silence. Looks like the company's internal rules need to be changed somewhat. In any case, our second goal had been met. Next up would be... Over there. Sir Erich is in danger. Yu Junghyuk picked up both the unconscious Jiang Hui1 and Yi Hyunseong. But before we could safely get out from there, the doors to the training ground burst open and the royal guards rushed in. However, it wasn't just them who showed up here. Someone else was walking out from the line of guards and towards us. The first triple master of Kaixenix Archipelago. The genius who had reached the peak of Swordmaster at barely 18 years old. The youngest ever Ninth Circle Archmage. The ruler of the archipelago, who controls an evil black dragon. No one in the Kaixenix Archipelago was capable of defeating her right now. The king, with a silver-colored crown, was quietly smiling at us. You dare to steal away my loyal knight. The royal guards all knelt down before her. Yu Junghyuk's expression hardened, and he sent me a message. This is different from our plan. Actually, this is for the better. Because our next target was Han Soo-young anyway. There were 4 members of Kim Dokya's company present right now. The fable of the nebula would be strengthened further if more of the nebula's members were in one place. I looked at the Queen's face and spoke up. Your Majesty, we didn't come here to fight. Without a doubt, Han Soo-young's ego was lying inside that Queen asleep, and I simply had to get her ego back from that character, no matter what. And with things like this, we could use our fable and... I'm aware you came to tell me a story. Feeling startled just a little, I stared at her. Great fable, Kaixenix Archipelago, is sending a mocking jeer in your direction. Why are you so surprised? This one too enjoys stories very much. However, this one enjoys telling stories rather than listening to them. So keep your ears wide open and listen well, Ricardo von Kaixenix. The Queen spread her arms wide and grinned brightly towards me. No, should that be the Demon King of Salvation, Kim Dokya. Chapter 379, Episode 72, 3 Methods 3. I stared at the Queen wearing Han Soo-young's face. That person was definitely not her. But then, how could she possibly know what my name was? The Queen was still smiling away. I'm sure you're curious as to how I know your name. She was the character from this worldview, and she was merely an existence that acted according to the rules set out by the great fable. So, it was impossible for a person like that to recognize me not as Ricardo, but as Kim Dokya. On top of that, she spoke of things that didn't align with the worldview, yet the sparks of probability weren't suppressing her at all. Worldview is considering the possibility of expanding the genre types. Great fable, Kaixenix Archipelago, is condoning the current situation. Probability restrictions imposed on some words has been relaxed. Meta words related to the worldview have been acknowledged. I wordlessly stared at the Queen before activating my skill. Unique skill character list has activated. Character information. Name. Age 50. Overall rating. The applicable individual holds hatred towards you. The Queen's info still didn't want to appear. I thought that was because it was Han Soo-young in the beginning. I figured that, as a person not registered with the character list, her possession of the host would make it impossible to check out the information on the Queen herself. But what if I was wrong? Are you Han Soo-young? I used to be called that once upon a time. What do you mean by that? The Queen slowly blinked her eyes and continued on with her story. Do you know the tale of a certain woman who tried to endure decades upon decades of time with nothing but her ultimately empty hope? I do know of a man with a similar story. It was Yu Jung-hyuk who replied in my stead, as he unsheathed his dark heavenly demon sword. The smile remained on the queen's lips as she spoke. "Oh, my pitiful former lover, it seems that you've come to your own execution ground. Our engagement has been annulled already. Call me that one more time and I shall slice your head off." Almost at the same time, the figures of both people disappeared from view. And then, these two incredible existences collided against each other, as the ear-shattering sounds of explosions rang out. The ceiling of the training grounds blew away. The sword winds and magical energy clashed to create a rising pillar of destructive winds kissing the heavens above. At a casual glance, they seemed to be evenly matched, but if one were to look deeper into the flow of the battle itself, then that was definitely not the case. After they exchanged dozens of moves in the blink of an eye, Yu Jung-hyuk was left with a slight injury on his left arm. On the other hand, there was not one scratch on the queen. Yu Jung-hyuk was being pushed back. That inconceivably strong dude wasn't quite powerful enough to contend with the queen of this worldview. On top of that, Han Soo-young's speciality, Dark Flame's aura was rising up from the queen's left arm as well. "Dokyo SSI, you must get out of there. Yi Hyun-seong protected me from the royal guards trying to rush in." Dokyo SSI. It seemed that Jiang Huiwon too had somehow regained her wits. Sadly, though, there was no time to pay them any mind right now. The seconds ticked by, and the previously even balance of the battle rapidly tilted away from Yu Jung-hyuk's favor, because his opponent today just so happened to be none other than the Triple Master. "Han Soo-young, you need to wake up." I brought forth the power of the Great Fable without hesitation. Great Fable, Demon World Spring, has begun its storytelling. The fable I shot into the air above with all my power created a gap in the fighting in an instant. I didn't miss that opening and jumped into the battlefield. The queen grinned and opened her arms wide. "Oh, the demon king of salvation. The woman you're searching for has died a long time ago." "Stop making me laugh. Han Soo-young would never speak in that manner. Are you aware of what the lifetime of 50 years means to a person?" "No, I had no idea. I hadn't lived that long yet after all." Great Fable, Kaiksenix Archipelago, has begun its storytelling. The entire world seemed to wiggle around, and the figure of Han Soo-young living in this land floated up on the empty air. This was her fable, her history as she lived in this world. More specifically, the history as experienced by her host, Yuri de Aristal, the beautiful esteemed daughter of an earl. A girl brought up for the sake of becoming a new queen. Once you turn 18, you shall enter the royal castle. The Han Soo-young I know could be seen among the chaotically rising lines of texts. Fine, in that case, should I become a swordmaster before I turn 18? She began fighting against the world itself. She was living in this world with a clear, focused expression on her face. She was experiencing this world with an expression I couldn't recognize. Why is a young girl swinging around a sword? Magic is nothing but an illusion. Certain clichés would try to hinder a person with the pretext of being clichés. And the Han Soo-young I know hated clichés more than anyone out there. "Screw it, you think I'll marry just because you say so. Bring someone stronger than me, then I'll marry that person then." Countless men stepped forward to take possession of the Earl's beautiful daughter. Among them were famed knights of the archipelago as well as renowned magicians. Han Soo-young became stronger and stronger in order to defeat all the potential suitors with her own hands. At the end of the harsh training soaked in her blood and sweat, she became the swordmaster and eventually rose up as the 9th Circle Archmage, and finally, the Master of Fear who controlled the powers of an evil dragon. Her flesh became younger through the power of the Swordmaster, and the aura from the evil black flame enhanced her air of mysteriousness even further. Ironically, though, the stronger she got, the world grew to desire her even more. Han Soo-young continued to fight against such a world. She spent a far longer life in this place than she did on Earth, and did her very best to diligently endure that lengthy period of time. Her fable carried on with its storytelling, but I couldn't hear it anymore from a certain point onwards. It was lonesome. I felt a sense of rebellion, even though Han Soo-young was in this world alongside me. It felt as if she was so far away. This isn't Han Soo-young's world. Who are you to decide that? You have known her for less than 4 years, no more than that. And if you count the days you spent with her, it'd be less than 1 year even. That was probably all true. What do you really know about Han Soo-young? I recalled the Han Soo-young that I knew in my head. A person with a strong pride who didn't know how to apologize or take back what she said. A person who pursued efficiency, but who'd readily give up on that very efficiency for the sake of her companions. A person who acted all selfish and the like, but who'd always go, "You guys can't do anything without me," and get ready to risk her life. In what kind of manner did she speak? Was the Han Soo-young I knew the real Han Soo-young? Did she still exist in the story that I know? The Han Soo-young you knew no longer exists. The past 50 years had molded her into a brand new existence, and that is precisely me. The great fable rushing out from behind the Queen's back, emitted incredibly dense fighting intent in our direction. Great fable, Keixenix archipelago is excluding your existences. In front of the time spanning 50 years, the memories of the short time Han Soo-young and I shared together gradually looked pathetic and insignificant. To make sure that the memories wouldn't grow any more insignificant, I forced out a smile and had to open my mouth. As I thought, "You are not Han Soo-young. She's not as serious as you know." There was a faint trace of agitation in the Queen's expression. And from that hint of unrest, I became certain of who this Queen was. Without a doubt, she was infinitely closer to being Han Soo-young. However, she could never fully be her. "You are none other than Yuri d'Aristal, the daughter of the Earl, and who just so happened to watch Han Soo-young's life for the longest time. You probably seized the opening created by the great fable swallowing Han Soo-young up and took over her body. Now speak, where is the real Han Soo-young?" Instead of a verbal answer, an incredible status poured out from her entire body. Kwadujujudu. As if the intense battle we fought until now was nothing but a warm-up, the waves of status unshackled from her entire being crashed into us, causing our bodies to become rooted to the spot. Yu Jung-hyuk, Yi Hyun-seong, Jiang Hui-won, and me. The Queen slowly made her way towards us, as our movements were completely sealed now. I asked her, "Are you planning to kill us all?" "Kill you?" A derisive smirk floated up on her lips. "Looks like you still don't know much about this scenario. Since you all have survived this far, that means none of you will die. And Han Soo-young also wishes for that. However, you tried to execute me earlier, didn't you? That was your assigned test, and you were scheduled to be rescued by the first prince anyway." The Queen laughed as if she was Han Soo-young. "And now, the end of this scenario is upon us." Sparks danced in the air, and the new scenario message could be heard now. The deciding moment for the genre selection has arrived. You must select this worldview's genre. The Queen stared at the air and spoke. The end of this world has always remained the same. A sense of desolation, refined through a lengthy period of time, brushed past her expression. The Isle of Reincarnators was a series of islands where the dead fables were put on display like stuffed animals. It was a grave of fables that managed to continue existing by supplying suitable stages to other scenarios. I could more or less guess the life she had lived until now. The archipelago of Keixenix must have offered up hundreds of possession scenario, and hundreds of Ricardos and Schweikens must have resolved their stories in their own preferred manner. The protagonist became a better person by braving all sorts of trials and tribulations, and finally gets his hands on wealth, honor, and the love of his life, heading towards the inevitable happy ending, although the progress of this scenario had been a bit more peculiar. In the end, the conclusion won't change. So, let us just end this already. She spoke in a fed-up tone of voice, and then issued an order to me. "Marry me, Ricardo von Keixenix." Yu Jung-hyuk stared at me with a dumbfounded expression. Yi Hyunseong and Jiang Huiwon freaked out and began shouting something in my direction. I calmly asked a question instead. Is that the conclusion of this scenario? That's right. If I marry you, are you going to let us move on to the next scenario? Also correct, but with the exception of one person. One person, she said. The deep-seated shadow of avarice danced within the eyes of the queen. Han Soo-young must remain in this world. You see, I really like her, and you shall become the tragic lover saying goodbye inside a scenario. Genre of the applicable scenario is tilting towards romance. Scenario clear condition will be fulfilled as soon as the genre has been confirmed. This world was negotiating with us for a deal, telling us to abandon Han Soo-young. Living in this world, and not in her original world, suits her better. That might be true as well. Rather than Han Soo-young of Kim Dok-ya's company, Han Soo-young of Kaiksenix Archipelago might be able to enjoy a happier life instead. The queen, arrogantly staring down at me, extended her left hand out. Stand up and kiss my hand, and say your farewell to your longtime companion. It was a white hand. Han Soo-young would have fought against this world with that hand. On the back of her white hand, I could see dozens of scars and callous skin. Just, for what purpose did she fight so hard like that? I recalled her book tucked away within my inner pocket and raised my voice. Just like you said, I do not know Han Soo-young. Indeed, you finally acknowledged it. That is why I definitely can't let her go. What was that? You see, I haven't heard the conclusion of this story from her yet. I slowly got up from my spot while summoning up every ounce of strength I possessed in order to resist this world's fable. Tsu-cha-cha-cha-cha. Great fable, torch that swallowed the myth, is roaring out. Great fable, demon world spring, is nodding its head. The queen's expression changed, and she glared at me. You're ruining a scenario on the verge of completion. Nope, this is the way it's supposed to go. What was that? I've been curious about this since the beginning. Out of all the potential scenarios out there, why were we thrown into this Kaiksenix archipelago in the first place? However, when I thought about it, the reason was actually quite simple. I pulled out a certain sword from my inner pocket and spoke. That's because I am the legitimate heir to the throne in this scenario. The unbreakable faith glowed brightly and emitted blinding rays of pure light. Worldview is reacting to the star relic, unbreakable faith. Applicable star relic belongs to this particular worldview. Natural abilities of the star relic are increasing tremendously. The first ancestor of the Kaiksenix archipelago was the legendary Storm King, Ulysses Kaiksenix, and this was his sword. That sword is. That's the sword of the Storm King. The royal guards recognized the sword and they all collapsed down to the ground. The queen fell into a state of panic and began pouring out her powerful physical aura and magical energy in my direction. Unfortunately for her, though, not even the power of a swordmaster, nor that of an archmage, could do much in front of the unbreakable faith. Star Relic Unbreakable Faith is crying out. This was the true power of the Star Relic. It would exhibit a near-omnipotent level of power when inside the fable where it was created. My hand gripping the sword began trembling non-stop. Sure, the Star Relic itself might be powerful, but Ricardo von Kaiksenix simply didn't possess enough strength to hold the weapon for too long. That was why I needed to end this as quickly as possible. I smacked away the queen's magical energy waves and got closer to her, a step at the time. By the time I reached her, she had fallen on her butt. She was carrying an expression of resignation ever since she saw the sword. You have chosen the route of dynastic revolution. You must kill the queen. Genre of the applicable scenario is tilting towards fantasy. Han Soo-young's book said that there were 3 ways to complete this scenario. Unfortunately, she left out the most crucial third method in her book. If I kill the queen now, then Han Soo-young would die as well. But if I marry her, then she would be left behind. In that case, how should I conclude this tale then? What would be the end of the scenario that Han Soo-young wanted? The queen spoke, "Hurry and kill me. If I do that, then I become a true king, and end the scenario right here." Han Soo-young didn't tell me the correct answer, as if she was telling me to use my own imagination for something like that. That was why I decided to carry out what I thought was the correct solution. The method to save Han Soo-young without killing the queen and still manage to seize the throne. The thing is, though, I'm already the king of a kingless world, you see. What was that? Not only that, I'm the head representative of Kim Dok-ya's company, and the heir of the underworld, too. I looked at the queen's scar-filled hands. Han Soo-young became a swordmaster and an archmage through those hands. The Han Soo-young that I knew wasn't someone who'd set a simple goal of survival in this world, because she was an author who knew how to look at the bigger picture. I smiled and raised my voice. You see, I'm really fed up with being a king. You have chosen a course that has never been thought of before. Worldview is flustered by your selection. I held the queen's hand and slowly helped her up, and rather than kissing her hand, I placed unbreakable faith in there instead. What are you trying to do, this? Don't be mistaken, I'm not trying to give you the ruler's position. Then what? The one who'll become the king isn't you, but my comrade. As the queen's eyes grew wider, I finished what I wanted to say. It'll be Han Soo-young from Kim Dok-ya's company. In the following moment, there was an explosion of scenario messages before my eyes. Error has occurred during the scenario selection process. Potential genre option, fantasy, is falling apart. Potential genre option, fusion fantasy, is falling apart. Potential genre option, romance, is falling apart. Hidden option, genre, Kim Dok-ya's company, is activating. And then someone spoke to me. You've managed to figure it out, haven't you, Kim Dok-ya? Chapter 380, 3 Methods 4. Han Soo-young. I thought I heard her voice, but her aura disappeared rather quickly. Great fable, Keixenix Archipelago, cannot acknowledge your selection. Worldview is displaying an abnormal reaction. Yuri de Aristol, inadvertently now holding unbreakable faith, began trembling and shouted out loudly, "You dare to do something like this? You're a suitable heir to the crown of Grunsiad Archipelago. Your throne is being handed over to the character, Han Soo-young. Worldview cannot understand your choice." Rays of bright light began leaking out from Yuri de Aristol's body. Those were fables that didn't belong to her. Indeed, they were Han Soo-young's, stuff that I knew very well. Yuri de Aristol hugged her shoulders, as if she didn't want to let any of those fables to slip out of her. "I won't let Soo-young go like this. Soo-jut. Be still, I told you that I'll take full responsibility, did I?" She wasn't speaking to me right now. I didn't want this sort of development either. I only thought that if you continued to stay in this island. I could guess who Yuri de Aristol was talking to, and what the topic of their conversation right now was. Exclusive skill, Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint, has activated. The time Yuri de Aristol and Han Soo-young had spent together was flowing by like a river of fragments. "You said that you'll stay with me. You said that you'll become my guardian, didn't you? I really love the scenario you've shown me. I can't let you go like this. My bad, Yuri." Blood bubbled out of her mouth and she staggered unsteadily before collapsing on the ground. I hurriedly held her in an embrace. Most likely, there was a war being fought between Han Soo-young and Yuri de Aristol inside this body right about now. Great fable, Keixenix Archipelago, is. Great fable, torch that swallowed the myth, is. Great fables were bitterly fighting against each other in order to take over her body. The surrounding folks also fell into a pit of sudden confusion as well. Our king has changed. But with a method like this. So does this mean that the legitimate king has appeared among us? The royal guards and the kingdom's citizens were exchanging glances with complicated eyes and whispered amongst themselves. In that case, what about our world's genre? SHH, have you forgotten that such words are still prohibited? Just focus on sticking to your role. Then again, I'd also form an expression similar to theirs if I heard that this world's genre had suddenly become Kim Dakya's company. Yu Jung-hyuk, standing next to me, spoke up. Kim Dakya, we acted too rashly. I know. This archipelago isn't prepared enough yet to accept Han Soo-young as its ruler. Since she had built up a good foundation already, I thought it was doable, you know. I mean, she was the queen of this place up until a few moments ago. She wasn't its rightful ruler, because there is a faction unwilling to acknowledge her that we still have the revolutionaries. A forceful change of the throne would always lead to a great deal of birthing pain. For instance, Yuri de Aristotle's throne usurpation during this scenario was not a part of the original Kaiksenix archipelago scenario. The Queen's unpredictable action and our subsequent actions were completely foreign events to the reincarnators of the Kaiksenix archipelago, who had repeated the exact same scenario over and over again. Genre selection has been completed. Applicable genres, clear conditions have not been met. This world was not yet ready to accept the brand new genre that we had created. Starstream is discussing the topic of the applicable scenario's clear condition. Things have become complicated. Yu Jung-hyuk and I were looking at Han Soo-young lying on top of a luxurious bed. From a while ago, the sounds of chaotic explosions continued to ring out from beyond the royal castle's walls. All the ruckus was made by two factions fighting a bloody battle, one agreeing to the ascension of their new ruler, and the other being the citizens who rejected her. Yuri de Aristotle's rule was bound to fail in the end, said Yu Jung-hyuk in a critical tone of voice. As for us, we should have tried to gather the king's flag-bearers scattered around the powerful families in the kingdom. After that, steadily erode away the king's influence and unveil the unbreakable faith to complete the task. If that happened, the archipelago wouldn't have fallen into chaos like this. Right, that would have been the best-case scenario. If you knew that, then why? However, had we stuck to that plan then? I stopped there for a bit and observed Han Soo-young's face. Her 50 years would have become even longer, you know. I didn't want to extend her 50 years by even 1 minute if I could help it. I was being serious here. The moment I arrived in this world and realized that Han Soo-young had to spend 50 years here, I just couldn't escape from this one overwhelming emotion. Someone was sacrificed again because of me. Han Soo-young, who had to endure the time frame of 50 years, could she still maintain a normal, functioning mind? Was she able to maintain the ego of the Han Soo-young that I know of? This is all because I made a deal with the king of reincarnators. It be een beter if I sacrifice myself instead. I turned my head to discover Yu Jung-hyuk glaring at me as if I was a pathetic fool. His lips bobbed up and down several times, but then squeezed his eyes shut as if to suppress his anger and leaned his back against the couch's cushions. I'd like to say something, but it seems that someone else will do that for me instead. What? Right in that next instant, fiery pain shot up from the back of my head. Hey Kim Dakya. I looked back to find a familiar grinning face waiting for me. Everything screwed up because of you. Han Soo-young brushed her hair lazily and sat upright, before smacking me in the head once more. Once Han Soo-young woke up, we immediately dove into an emergency meeting. Other than her pale complexion, she was in pretty high spirits. I left behind methods for you to follow, did I? How come you lot can't even do what's in the manual? You guys are even worse than Yi Hyun-seong. You hear me? I spotted Yi Hyun-seong, guarding the door to our room alongside Jiang Hui-won, peek his head inside through the open gap for a moment there. Kim Dakya, recite to me the 3 methods I wrote down. First method, fusion fantasy route. And what did it say? Borrow the powers of the outer gods and clear the scenario. Hey, you, that's a stupid idea from the get-go, isn't it? Okay then, the second one. Even though I felt this inexplicable sense of unfairness, I nevertheless continued to read Han Soo-young's book like a school textbook. The second method, fantasy. The contents. Start a revolt and kill the king. Hang on a sec, why am I reading thigh? Her palm smacked me in the back of the head again. God damn it, this punk. The third method, romance. And its contents are: marry Yuri the Aristotle. And just what did you choose? The third method. And are we currently married? Nope. And why the hell not? I quickly evaded her flying smack and cried out, "Hey, there's no freaking way that these are the correct methods. Did you write these down while seriously expecting us to carry them out? You think I wrote them for your entertainment then?" Han Soo-young breathed heavily like an angry bull and began wagging her finger at me. If only you accepted the marriage proposal, everything would have been resolved by now. If your legitimate claim to the throne was united with Yuri the Aristotle's martial prowess, the archipelago wouldn't have fractured into pieces like right now. But if I did that, then you'd have ended up stuck. I could have easily convinced Yuri. My original plan was supposed to begin properly only after you got married to her. You were busy praising me for finding a solution on my own earlier, though. I was merely impressed by your stupidly bad interpretation of the situation. Damn it, that's how it was. Han Soo-young spat out a groan and continued on. So, what are we going to do now? The revolutionaries, or the royal guards, didn't matter which side we pick. The situation would quickly descend into the worst situation imaginable. Error has occurred in the scenario. Worldview cannot accept the conclusion to the applicable scenario. Worldview is uncertain whether the character, Han Soo-young, possesses the qualifications of the ruler or not. Starstream is discussing the topic of the applicable scenario's clear condition. Citizens were fighting amongst themselves, and we were unable to leave the scenario. I looked at Han Soo-young and spoke. "I'm really sorry for being so late." She shrugged her shoulders and replied, "Yup, it's been long, these past 50 years. I couldn't find the right words to reply to her relaxed attitude. As if wanting to lighten my load, she continued on. "Actually, I can't remember all that well. But that doesn't sound right. Do you honestly believe that I'd really live out those 50 years just like that?" "What then?" "I forgot most of them. More correctly, I erased them deliberately. If I did remember them, I'd probably have gone crazy by now." Only then did I finally realize what her situation was. She possessed the skill Avatar, and it was a pretty useful skill in erasing her memories, depending on how it was utilized. The reason why I left that book behind was to preserve the stuff I'd forget. You made a wise decision. It was a cowardly method, you know, not something to be praised anyhow. Han Soo-young glanced at the corner of the room and spoke up. "Well, there is a monster in the world who had lived far longer than I have and chose not to forget a single thing after all." She didn't have to say who it was for me to know who she was referring to here. In order to lighten the awkward atmosphere, I resorted to making exaggerated gestures while raising my voice. "Okay, let's not worry about that and think up of a solution from now on. Speaking from the perspective of a reader, the next portion of the story should be..." Han Soo-young realized what I was trying to do and quickly buted in. "Nope. Judging from the perspective of a writer, the things we need to do right now are..." Han Soo-young and I began yapping amongst ourselves with whatever we could think up, such as summon a Dakibai and lodge our complaints, or summon a low-ranked outer god we are confident of dealing with, or even smashing apart whatever was in our way, scenario or not, and try to escape from here. Both of you shut up. And both of us did shut up after hearing Yoo Jung-hyuk's words. Han Soo-young studied his mood for a bit and stuck to my side while muttering out loudly, "Well, it should be fine to trust the instincts of the protagonist every now and then." I nodded my head in agreement. Yoo Jung-hyuk opened his mouth in the meantime. "Later today in the afternoon, the flag-bearers of the archipelago will gather at the royal palace. That's when we fight. A bog-standard tactic then. That's the only method." Yoo Jung-hyuk was right, though. Sometimes the standard way of handling things was the best solution available. Night came knocking pretty quickly. Nobles dispatched by the influential families had gathered in the audience chamber. We hurried our steps towards there as well. The whole of the archipelago was boiling over with this unidentifiable hostility. The faction arguing to distinguish the legitimate king, another faction who sympathized with the dark magician, and finally, a faction utterly hostile towards our entire group. As we walked in the hallways filled to the brim with chaotic aura, Jiang Huiwan muttered to herself, "If only the kids were with us, it'd have been so much better. How unfortunate." True, if the kids possessing tamming skills were here, or even Yi Jai with the ability to fight in a large-scale battle, we wouldn't have felt this much pressure. They have things they must do by themselves. Most likely, they are in the middle of their own scenarios. What about Hayong SSI? Technically speaking, Hayong isn't a member of Kim Dokya's company, so she should have been summoned to a different scenario from ours. If things were going according to the original storyline, then Jang Hayong should be performing her own role somewhere else, and that was something I couldn't help her with. I walked faster through the hallways under the protection of Jiang Huiwan and Yi Hyunseong. In front of us, Han Soo-yong and Yu Jung-hyuk were competing in a mini foot race to see who could stay ahead. It felt like I was watching a stork and a crotot compete against each other. TL, an old Korean idiom. Basically, it means don't bite off more than you can chew. Jiang Huiwan, watching the same spectacle as me, sneaked closer to whisper something in my ear. Dokya SSI. Yes, I might be overstepping my boundary here a bit, but I think you should know about this. Regarding. She locked her gaze on the backs of Yu Jung-hyuk and Han Soo-yong and hushed her voice even further. In regards to those two's relationship.